Fellas, do you want your grooming routine to be a one-and-done deal? Well, the days of using the same trimmer for your face and your most private of parts are over, thanks to our friends over at Manscaped. Introducing the Beard and Balls bundle, featuring the Lawnmower 5.0 and the Beard Hedger, one trimmer for the moneymaker and another for the boys downstairs. Plus, get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PRETTYDARK at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PRETTYDARK at manscaped.com. Ah, yes, I do recall the dark days of trimming my entire body with the same old, tired electric razor handed down through the generations to my father and his father before him, like some god-forsaken generational curse. Oh, I've got some war stories, you better believe it. But suffice it to say, there's nothing worse than getting nicks in your sensitive nooks and cuts in your tender crannies. The bloodshed. Oh, God, the bloodshed. But now is the time for peace and healing, thanks to Manscaped. This bundle offers the Lawnmower 5.0 Ultra, which can clear a path through the bushiest of thickets, thanks to its 2 interchangeable skin-safe blade heads that are gentle even in the most delicate of places, and the Beard Hedger, which features a titanium-coated stainless steel T-blade and 20 length options, so you can achieve any style you want with just a simple twist of the zoom wheel. From that coveted 5 o'clock shadow to the full-blown lumberjack within, now you can finally be the man you always knew you could be. So what are you waiting for? Go get 20% off plus free shipping with the code PRETTYDARK at manscaped.com. That's 20% off plus free shipping with the code PRETTYDARK at manscaped.com. No more dealing with the bloody razors of generational trauma. Just efficient, effective grooming wherever you need it. For the premium grooming experience, trust Manscaped.
You're listening to That's Pretty Dark,
the podcast where we talk about all of the entertainment that scared us as children
and still haunts us as adults. So grab your flashlight and join us as we take a frightfully nostalgic look over our shoulders
and under our beds
and in our closets.
And together we'll realize, whoa, that's pretty dark.
Pretty dark.
Well, clearly you want Buzz to take over for me.
Buzz, you and me, pal.
Buzz was in my lap and I was telling him how he needs to pay attention to what I'm doing because one day I might need him to take over the chocolate factory. I mean, take over the podcast for me, and I need an honest, good boy to come along and just, somebody that I can trust.
It's a good thing he sits in for every episode because one day, everything the light touches.
Everything the light touches, which is also a really depressing thing to say today because...
Oh, God, I forgot.
James Earl Jones just passed, so
no.
Rest in peace,
God
James.
Damn it.
Yeah, this is off to a wonderful, beautiful, not depressing at all start.
Man, all the good die young.
They do, don't they?
He wasn't that young.
Neither was Gene Wilder, but they were all young at heart.
That's true. That's very true.
And it's probably what helped them live as long as they did, you know?
Yeah.
Buzz is gone now. Sweet boy.
He's gone now?
Yeah, he just left.
He was getting too sad thinking about you being gone. Wow.
I'm sorry, buddy. Or either Mufasa, because that might have some psychological impact.
We all know he'll be back. Hello and welcome to the official, unofficial beginning to the 2024 spooky season.
Yeah, unofficially.
Here on That's Pretty Dark podcast.
We're getting a little head start. My name is Kaylin.
My name is Christian. And yeah, pretty unorthodox in a way because we're splitting up a series.
To enter a new month.
To enter into our week-to-week.
The spookiest month of all.
October spooktacular.
Spooktacular.
Bonanza.
Honestly, yeah, this is not our typical protocol, but because this is just such a big topic, we felt like it was appropriate to lead us into the spooky season. So,
yeah, buddy.
If you haven't gathered it yet, Darkling friends, today...
Just blindly clicking on podcast episodes.
We are exploring...
Give me content. I don't even care what it is.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
I feel like I've already covered like a lot of heavy hitters this year, so maybe I am indeed an Augustus glutton for punishment. But we are about to do it again.
Far from gloopy.
Wonka's whistle and the timeless melody of pure imagination grabbed a hold of me sometime this summer, despite my current inability to eat any of the candy that it makes me crave.
The candy man
and
can.
as we barreled towards September on the calendar, the rowers kept on rowing, and it would not let me go.
That's pretty good.
This is one of the only times, save Pinocchio, that we've dipped this far into the past. We usually stay real comfy in our 80s and 90s bubble.
Mm-hmm.
But as we talk about all the time, the content from prior to the 80s and 90s really fueled a lot of what we, had produced for us as children. So
this and Watcher in the Woods and Pinocchio, I think are our only things from before the 80s.
Yeah. So
I think
it's a momentous occasion.
It's so exciting.
But I have all the confidence in the world bringing Willy Wonka into the Pretty Dark universe because I know that I'm one of countless millennials whose parents grew up appreciating this film. My dad passed this film on to me pretty much as soon as I could comprehend stories.
Mm-hmm.
And because of that, it's one of the earliest theatrical and musical touchstones that I can remember in my life.
The Candyman can.
The Candyman can.
The Candyman can.
Although I was born 3 decades into this legacy here, laced into my consciousness was this curious mingling of dark imagery and fantastical vision. The golden ticket rags to riches, hope beyond hope. The satirical slant and accompanying moral superiority, the psychological undercurrent, palpable even to a child's mind, and Gene's particular assured cadence and the affectation that he gave to Wonka. It all trickled down into my taste buds, if you will. Like, candy, and also like tasting things.
Yeah, sure. No, I get it. I get it.
Thank you. And it is itself one of the reasons that the idea for this very podcast was so appealing to me. Before I was even fully aware of such things, it nurtured my fascination with the razor-thin line between the beautiful and the melancholy, the earnest and the untoward, and even the past and the present. And it got me hooked on the intoxicating flavor of wishes and dreams.
I'm here for the puns.
Oh yeah, I need to lean on you for those, because I was really trying, and they just weren't coming to me. I felt so sincere about this movie, so I have some, but you can be our ringleader.
You guys can lean on me
where the puns are concerned.
like a candy cane.
Nice.
Thank you.
Nicely done.
Get it? Because walking around, you need to lean on something. It's like a cane.
And Willy Wonka had a cane.
Made of candy, right. I don't know if his was. I'm sure it was, and they just never talked about it.
It wasn't necessary. Well, it could have been. I don't know.
Could have been.
I don't know.
Could have
Was
been.
his cane edible? These are the questions
These are the questions
we need to answer.
Get Gene on the horn.
I wish.
Right.
I later read the book, too, sometime in elementary school, and of course the Tim Burton film was actually released in the midst of my adolescence.
Yeah.
But for me and my own personal order of operations, there's just nothing quite the same as this Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
And I just read the book this past weekend.
For the first time?
Yes. First time.
I had no idea.
And it was absolutely delightful and delicious, delectable.
Color me shocked.
It was great.
I cannot believe that's the first time you've read it.
It was just so entertaining. It's Roald Dahl, so everything he wrote was just incredible. But I didn't expect to really, really thoroughly enjoy it that much.
Yeah. It's...
That's what I'm going to be bringing to the table.
A classic for a reason, I feel like.
Some book details.
A whole new perspective. That's a whole new world for you.
It really is.
You're such a Roald Dahl fan.
I am.
It surprises me.
I'm a slow reader, and I can attest you can read it in an afternoon. So if you're interested, go for it.
Maybe I should go back to it between these two.
It's a really good time.
Let us know how you feel, dear Darklings, about these adaptations and the book and everything else. I'm sure you will. I'm sure people have very big opinions on which Wonka is the canon and correct Wonka.
I'm sure.
Released by Paramount Pictures, the film, which is somehow rated G, premiered theatrically on June 30th, 1971. But fun fact, this was just a few months before the opening of Walt Disney's Magic Kingdom. So within my neurodivergence, it's funny, but I've always considered 1971 to have been a pretty magical year.
Yeah, sounds like
What's a more fun fact is that the golden ticket in the movie claims the date of the tour is October 1st, which was the actual opening date of the Magic Kingdom, October 1st, 1971.
Oh, that's nuts.
Yeah.
See, in the book,
it's February.
It's February 1st.
It's February in the book. It's also February in the Tim Burton movie.
Really?
But for some reason, this production chose October, and I like that they did, because October 1st, 1971 will live in infamy for at least 2 very sweet reasons. But the funnest fact is that October 1st is also our Pretty Dark podcast anniversary.
Podcast anniversary.
Not 1971, but hey.
I thought it was the second.
I looked back to see, and it was a Friday was the first, and I don't remember if we released on the Friday or the Saturday. If we released at midnight on the Saturday,
that's true.
We can say
we'll
it.
Claim
we can
it.
claim it.
We'll claim it. That's awesome. Yeah, I love anything that lines up with our own, personal.
I was seeing some dots connecting, as we like to say with David.
The dipping dots.
The dipping dots.
Sprinkles.
The candy dots. You remember the dots that would be on the paper? They have them in the candy shop in this movie where you would peel them off the wax paper.
Yeah, those are weird.
Yeah.
I never got that
They
candy.
are, but I got them. I don't know why.
I never understood it.
It was a thing. While not received favorably by moviegoers of the era, only profiting $1 million on its $3 million budget, it was critically appreciated, and it took on another life entirely when it hit television airwaves, often, oddly, on holidays, over the next several years as one of the first films whose rights were sold to cable TV.
When it turned into a million tiny particles floating through the sky and then made its way to somebody's television in their living room.
You get it.
Yeah, I get it.
It further exploded into the classic we now know it to be with its VHS and Betamax release in the 80s and DVD and Laserdisc in the 90s. Also one of the first films to truly capitalize on the home video market when children of the 70s could finally exercise their buying power and get another look at that weird, wonderful movie that they repressed after catching it once on nighttime TV and subsequently pop it in the VCR for me. I hope that today, and soon in part 2, guided by that unshakable force of imagination, we can together paint a clearer picture of this beloved film's history, storied trivia, rumors, moral assertions, legendary performances, and yes, because it's always our favorite part of the batch, the pretty darkness and drama that it stirred up.
I just got to get one thing straight.
What's that?
I've always associated this movie, this entire, franchise, the concept of Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory, I've always associated this with Halloween.
Because candy.
Because of candy, yes. And I think that was solidified with the Tim Burton version where Willy Wonka's past, his history, his childhood had to do with Halloween candy. But you said you don't associate it with Halloween.
I don't. Not really.
What's that about?
Because I watched it so frequently as a kid.
Just all the time, no matter what?
It was always on. We would watch it constantly.
Yeah.
So it definitely was not one of those that we would just pull out at, Halloween time. Even on TV, the first airing was on Thanksgiving night.
Oh, interesting.
So it was more a holiday film than anything.
Well, that makes sense.
Based on timing.
I mean, it's also winter. It's cold. I just wonder, that made me wonder if I just did my typical thing of associating things with seasons or holidays or whatever that no one else does.
I do wonder. We'll have to ask our Darklings.
Yeah.
How do you feel?
Do you associate Willy Wonka and Charlie and their chocolate factory with the spooky season? Or is this an everyday?
Another holiday, perhaps, because again, it was a repeated thing on TV.
Could be a Christmas thing.
On holidays throughout the 70s, 80s, etc. So
right.
If your family did that, if your parents grew up watching it on holidays, maybe they did the same thing with you.
Yeah.
So there are definitely a lot of potential options.
I'm just curious. I'd like to know. Inquiring minds want to know.
We are that. We are that, if nothing else. Inquiring.
Tell me about it.
Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory follows the classic, if young, everyman, Charlie Bucket, who makes us all believe in fate and reward for our good deeds and mild manner when he finds a coveted golden ticket, which invites him on a group tour of Willy Wonka's mysterious factory. Little does he know, the factory is full of temptation. As Charlie and his not friends encounter new creations, whimsical disasters, and singing staff, they quickly learn that there's more to the story than confectionery bliss. Maybe death. Or if not death, a healthy dose of doom.
Death or something like it.
I'll be pulling information from quite a few sources today, including the Pure Imagination 2001 DVD featurette, a featurette called Mel Stewart's Wonka Vision, several articles from the New York Post, and as always, good old Wikipedia, IMDb, a couple other things. I'll let you know what they are, but
yeah,
everything got kind of blurry, so I wanted to up top credit some very important sources.
Yeah, dude. I love how it's Charlie's not friends.
Yeah,
they're
because they're not friends.
His associates.
His colleagues. Charlie's colleagues.
His contemporaries. Charlie's wannabes.
They were friends in real life, but on screen, not so much. Which is really funny because usually that's the opposite dynamic. They're friends on screen and not in real life.
I bet that was so much fun.
But before we get there, let's first walk it back to the book that started it all.
The one I'm holding in my hand.
This book, of course, is called Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
That's right, it is.
This was British author Roald Dahl's third novel, published in 1964, right after James and the Giant Peach.
Another great one.
Biography.com describes his inspiration.
At the age of 13, it's a good year, Dahl left his first British boarding school in 1929. and moved to Repton School in South Derbyshire. His new school came with an unexpected perk: free chocolate. The Cadbury Chocolate Company would send samples to the students in nondescript packaging to get their thoughts as a test audience. Dahl's experience as a teenager chocolate tester got his wheels spinning about what the candy-making process must be like. Of this, Dahl said, "It was then I realized that inside this great Cadbury's chocolate factory there must be an inventing room, a secret place where fully grown men and women in white overalls spent all their time playing around with sticky, boiling messes, sugar and chalks, and mixing them up and trying to invent something new and fantastic." Soon he imagined himself in that scenario, coming up with the perfect chocolate treat. "I would rush out into the corridor, clutching my new invention, and go bursting straight into the office of the great Mr. Cadbury himself," he continued, adding that the candy man's face would light up and he'd make him a director and give him 2 Rolls Royces. "I used to lie in bed at night at that boarding school, dreaming up more and more fantastic successes that I had with Mr. Cadbury and his factory." That's a good time. That sounds like so much fun.
I mean, yeah, to be a little boy, you're getting to taste candy for the first time before anybody else does, and
yeah,
it reminded me of you.
I'd love to be a chocolate test subject.
I feel like that's exactly how you would approach that situation.
Oh, I would definitely.
That is your mentality through and through. He's going to make me a director. I'm going to...
Oh, yes. This is a road I've been down many, many times. Impressing my superiors and people that I've never even met and who don't even know I exist. I've rehearsed acceptance speeches in the mirror, but hey, who hasn't done that?
Me.
Oh my God. It's so funny. It's so funny because, like, you say that about me. I think I'm coming to realize in my old age that I got that from my dad. I get all of this from my own dad. And it's funny because reading the book, being from the same time period in which my dad grew up, because he was born in like 51.
Right.
I just saw so much of his mentality and his upbringing and his lifestyle. Like, he basically was Charlie Bucket.
Wow.
If not a poorer version, because he didn't have any family love. Like, at least Charlie had family that loved him. My dad had nothing and no family that loved him. And so, like, I can see my dad as a grown-up Charlie that never had his dreams realized, and that just makes me so sad.
Wow. I mean, we all put ourselves in the Charlie boots, you know? Like,
we put ourselves in the Charlie bucket.
I really liked your accent for Roald Dahl, too.
It's more of a transatlantic affectation.
Yeah, it was definitely transatlantic. There was no true British slant to that.
I feel like the more I try, the less people like me, so I'm just going to like keep it even keel.
The more you try, the less people like you.
Yeah, the harder you try, the more you push people away. I just feel like if you meet them halfway, you entice them to meet you halfway.
Okay.
That's how you get cats to come to you, wild cats. That's how you get bears and...
You can't ever be too either.
Other natural predators. Yeah, that's how it works.
Gotta be very even keel, like Charlie. I don't want it that bad. I want it really bad, but like...
It's 1 foot outside the bucket, 1 foot in the bucket.
Charlie Bucket. Okay.
Wow.
I don't know why.
Davy Crockett throwback.
Don't know why. It's this era, I guess. Just happened to me. It came out in that moment. No clue. Not in my notes.
One day I'll tell you about my Davy Crockett offshoot kids series that I'm going to write one day.
Oh, God. Okay. Perfect. Of course you have a Davy Crockett series. Why wouldn't you?
Of course I do.
Naturally.
I've never told anyone that before.
Now you've told me and a whole bunch of darklings.
Thousands of people.
Y'all hear this secret?
Oh, Lord.
Speaking of people's biographies and their life stories, I won't dive too deeply, since we do have several more Dahl stories on deck, and we've got a lot of ground to cover today. But I personally had very little knowledge of Roald Dahl's adult life until I started doing this research. I think I had heard that about his boarding school, like in passing somewhere, but I really didn't know much about him as the Roald that wrote Charlie.
I keep him in the same box as like Dr. Seuss, Alvin Schwartz, people that I know to be, their own version of like geniuses, and people that I wouldn't be the same person if they never existed. But I've just sort of kept that box closed until the right moment. And
we're going to open it today.
This is the right moment for Roald Dahl.
Just a little. We're going to peek inside.
We've got more Roald Dahl to get to.
We do. I think that his brushes with both life's unfair cruelties and endless possibilities, as well as his desperate, near manic at times, desire to control or improve them, seem to bleed into his fiction. Two of the primary examples of this include the death of his daughter from measles, and the near death of his son from being hit by a cab as his stroller was being pushed by a nanny.
Wow.
So these are 2 of his 3 children that had tragic accidents or in the case of his daughter, death.
Right.
And this all happened from 1960 to 1962 while he was working on Charlie and the Chocolate Factory.
Yeah, I read that it took him 4 years to finish it.
And this is why.
Yeah.
He actually devoted 18 months of this time frame to developing new medical technology when his son's skull was crushed in the accident.
Yeah.
So he was working on like a shunt basically to help get fluid off of his son's brain. And he was also reading to his daughter and making pipe cleaner figures with her just hours before she succumbed to measles.
God.
I feel like this helplessness helped bring the tales, which he could actually control, to life. And in a literal and figurative sense, I think pure imagination helped him survive these tragedies.
Man, I get that.
Me too.
I feel that so deeply.
I've also got some very, very interesting conversations to have with all of you about Mr. Dahl's faith background, but I'm going to save that for part 2, so don't read ahead.
Oh.
Tease, tease.
Okay.
Tease. I'm not kidding, though. These might have been some of my most personally harrowing worldview realizations in pretty dark history. So can't wait to get into that with you.
Just in recent days. Can we just get to that right now? Can we just do that?
I wish.
And forget everything else?
No.
That's what we're here for.
We gotta save it. We gotta save it because the darkness is coming in part 2. You guys know how movie nights work. In early 1970, 6 years after Charlie was published, it landed in the hands of 10-year-old Madeline Stewart, daughter of filmmaker Mel Stewart, as a school reading assignment. As was recounted in several behind-the-scenes featurettes, Madeline brought the book to her father and said he should make the movie and get Uncle Dave to produce it.
Wow.
Though uncredited, Madeline does appear in cameo as the girl in pigtails in the classroom across the aisle from Charlie.
Hey, good for her. That's really fun.
Uncle Dave, as Madeline called him, was Dave Wolper, an incredibly successful and well-connected director and producer that Mel Stewart met while working on the historical television series 20th Century, produced by Walter Cronkite's company, which looked at the major personalities and trends of the century through archival footage. Mel himself was a documentarian by trade, and he had 2 features under his belt by the time the idea to adapt Charlie came around. He actually made nearly 200 pictures, as he said, in his lifetime before his passing in 2012.
I miss calling them pictures.
I know. I call them pictures sometimes.
Actually, that has slipped out of
pictures.
me. Yeah.
That's what my mama used to call them, the moving pictures.
I always feel like I have a monocle and a pipe.
The pictures.
When I say picture.
You're going to be in a picture.
Yeah, I was working on this picture a few years ago.
It was this documentary background that led Stewart to often use a method approach while filming Wonka to keep certain details hidden and get genuine reactions from the actors.
Method approach from a director. Interesting.
It's different. Stewart and Wolper were resolved to make this movie, and Wolper purchased the film rights from Dahl for $200,000, inviting him to draft the screenplay.
Okay.
Next came the film's financing, which I pulled details on from an article in the Huffington Post and another one from CBC. It just so happened that Wolper was doing a project sponsored by Quaker Oats at the time, and he knew Quaker was working on breaking into the candy business.
Oh, okay.
Wolper suggested that Quaker Oats fund the movie and launch a candy bar at the same time.
Yeah?
Tax breaks and tax shelters introduced during the Nixon administration made film investment seem like a logical avenue for companies who wouldn't normally be investing in films, and film studios that were experiencing a changing economy with weekly movie attendance in the United States dropping from 44 million in 1963 to a low of just 14 million in 1971, were eager not to front the cash for new projects. So in the deal, Quaker would get rights to make the Wonka bar and would, of course, earn a percentage of the film's profits, a film that would essentially function as one giant ad for the chocolate, which made this project especially appealing. They would also cut a deal with Paramount to eventually release the film, and later, when it wasn't a commercial success, but let's not get ahead of ourselves, Warner Brothers would purchase the rights to distribute.
I did not realize that Quaker invented the Wonka bar.
Quaker.
Or distributed the Wonka bar.
Yeah, I don't know that we could quite say they invented it. It was kind of brought to them. But yeah.
Yeah, sure.
Quaker.
But
there's more to the story, though.
I was going to say, are you going to tell me about all the different candy that's come from the quote-unquote Wonka factory?
Kind of, sort of.
Because when we were kids, there was a lot of candy promotion.
And I'm going to explain.
With the Oompa Loompas and the Wonka candy.
I'm going to, yes.
Good.
Going to tell you why that is.
Thank God. I'm so glad we're doing this episode.
It is nice to know, right? It's nice to finally know.
These are questions that have been burning a hole in my brain since I was a child.
We're about to answer them. That's what we're here to do.
I love it.
I feel like this was a stroke of production brilliance by Mr. Wolper. And you may be aware, if you've heard these little trivia facts, This is also the main reason that the film is titled Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory rather than sticking with the book's title.
Charlie,
It's all about brand recognition, baby.
Willy Wonka. Hey, that makes sense. These guys, they feel like a bunch of Walt Disney's mixed with Steven Spielberg.
Just you wait. Just you wait.
I don't want to. I'm just so excited.
It's exciting. It's fun. It's a fun time. I've been stressed as hell about it, but it is fun to talk about and to write about.
I'm giddy.
Mel Stewart was also quoted as saying that if people say, I saw Willy Wonka, people would know what they were talking about. But if they say, I saw Charlie, it doesn't mean anything.
That's true.
I saw my buddy Charlie, you know.
Charlie.
Here's where I'm going to break your heart a little bit.
Charlie bit me.
Ironically, the original Wonka bars encountered an issue with the formula. And although they were supposed to be in stores for the film's release, they arrived melted on shelves and were quickly recalled.
Huh.
Two of the only products that Quaker's Willy Wonka Candy Company produced successfully in the 70s were Super Scrunch Bars and Peanut Butter Oompas.
Okay. All right.
Quaker sold this company to Nestle in 1988.
I see.
Which is likely what you and my other fellow 90s kids will remember seeing in the checkout line.
Okay, that makes a lot more sense.
I had always seen that it was Nestle. And so when I started doing this research, I was like, Quaker isn't Nestle.
Right.
That's why.
Nestle is its own rabbit hole that we need to go down one day.
Nestle did eventually resurrect the Wonka bar.
Yeah, dude.
And some of mine and my dad's favorites, real live everlasting gobstoppers.
I've always loved those. They don't last forever.
You might also remember that Nestle got a second chance at this whole promotion scheme when they were promoting the 2005 Tim Burton film.
Mm-hmm.
They had 5 different Wonka products, including the Wonka bar, each packaged with a golden ticket. And each golden ticket awarded a different prize to its finder. It was $10,000 cash for the Wonka bar.
Oh, wow. Hey.
I remember when that happened.
I don't remember. Why didn't I get those bars?
I don't know,
because
I sure did. I don't know that I was like committed to it. Like I need to find this golden ticket, but I absolutely remember seeing commercials when it happened.
That's so fun. Why does nothing like that happen now?
Because everything is oversaturated.
Where is all the magic gone?
And everybody's a creator.
Yeah, that's true.
I guess. It's a brand deal. It's just a really 70s way of doing a brand deal.
You know who's doing it right now is the new Beetlejuice movie.
In what way?
They've got branding stuff everywhere. They've got all kinds of products out there that are themed after the movie right now.
I haven't looked, but I hope that they have like Burger King toys or something because that's what they need to have.
That's what they need to do.
And see, those tie-ins are not as frequent, or either maybe I'm just not paying close enough attention, but I feel like a lot of that is geared more towards much, much, much younger kids. When I was a kid, there was Pokemon in there, which was for all ages. Yeah. You know, I don't know.
Yeah.
Transformers. Just depends.
Well, all the really, really great stuff that used to be for kids is now for adults.
Because we grew up.
Because we grew up and they're
were
marketing
kids when
it to
came out
us.
And it was for us. Yeah.
And it still is for us. It's forever for us. And all the stuff for kids now sucks. Sorry, kids. The best thing you got is Bluey. Mm-hmm. Paw Patrol's all right.
You're not
the
wrong.
new Teen Titans sucks. Old Teen Titans, man. Old Teen Titans.
I do love the old Teen Titans.
Ooh, OG is the best.
This episode is sponsored by BetterHelp. Hey Darklings, Kaylin here. We know our generation has a surplus of pretty darkness in common, and if there's one thing unpacking our upbringing has taught us, it's just how essential therapy is for shining a flashlight on the darkness in our own lives. I don't know where I'd be without mine. I believe every human can benefit from the perspective of a licensed therapist. Whether you're familiar with your own inner workings or you're just looking for a listening ear, you can give BetterHelp online therapy a try by going to betterhelp.com/prettydark and receive 10% off your first month. I get that online therapy can be tricky, but I've been seeing my therapist online since 2020, and I'm here to tell you that it's absolutely worth it. Getting started is always the hardest part, and BetterHelp makes that easy. You can begin right from your phone or computer in whatever way makes you most comfortable, via good old-fashioned phone calls, video chats, or even messaging, if that's more your style. We enjoy this frightful nostalgia and learning about how it all connects, but Darklings know we're also passionate about healing and growing from what we learn. If you dare to do the same, head to betterhelp.com/prettydark. There you can answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people like us. Plus, you can switch therapists at any time, so you're sure to find the right connection. Millennials are ditching the stigma and owning our mental health. And with BetterHelp, you can build a relationship with a professional all from the comfort of your own home, just how we like it. Visit betterhelp.com/prettydark or choose That's Pretty Dark podcast during sign up and enjoy 10% off your first month. That's betterhelp.com/prettydark. With funding secured and pre-production well underway, Dahl's screenplay was still not complete. He had basically, up until this point, essentially provided an outline and pointed them to sections of the novel, and he was uncooperative with some of the theatrical changes that Stewart felt he needed to make.
Yeah, that's tough.
In the Washington Post's 50th anniversary article, they explain, to remedy this, producer David Wolper called David Seltzer, with whom he had worked previously on the quasi-fictional documentary The Hellstrom Chronicle, to ask if he would finish the Wonka screenplay uncredited in exchange for Wolper's company producing his first film. They were worried that their credibility would be shot if another writer's name appeared beside Dahl. Seltzer was an aspiring screenwriter and said yes, and headed to Munich, where he wrote pages that were sent to the set as he finished them. It was the first real screenplay he had written.
Okay.
Seltzer went on to write The Omen and Bird on a Wire, among a few others.
The Omen, wow.
In one of the behind-the-scenes featurettes, Seltzer said that the first thing they'd begun shooting were the musical sequences. The actual first one was the scene in which Charlie is running home with the golden ticket. That was the first ever one they did. And you can feel that energy in that scene.
Yeah.
I can imagine it in my head. That's one of the most joyful scenes that I can recall from film.
Seriously,
and that was the first thing that they shot. So that kind of makes sense. They were all in Munich together, excited to start production.
I am curious about everything before the factory. Mm-hmm. It feels like a different movie. The pacing's very different.
And there are a couple reasons for that, I think. One of which is the fact that they desperately needed dialogue to get in and out of these musical numbers. So Seltzer had to write these scenes out of continuity because they didn't have the rest of the screenplay. Mm-hmm. And then once they finished a musical number, they'd break the set and do another one. They just knocked those all out up top.
Interesting.
I feel like that would be a nightmare as a writer.
That would be,
but
yeah.
Also a rush. Seltzer himself truly thought that no one would ever know that he had anything to do with this movie because he had agreed to an uncredited role. Mm-hmm. But he called the whole thing Baptism by Fire. It sounds like it was. One of my favorite and most memorable recurring themes of the film was conceived by Seltzer as he had Wonka quote from various literary sources. These little quips and asides gave Wonka such a mystifying, wise... Buzz. Get out from the way, buddy.
Buzz butt right in front of the camera.
Buzz butt. You gotta move, buddy. I need to see my notes. These little quips and asides gave Wonka such a mystifying, wise, well-read air that an already poetic and sentimental baby Kaylin found super enviable. And as Christian knows well, I still have a penchant for making my characters recite literature.
You do. That's a fact.
For both mine and baby Kaylin's sake. We'll list some of these quotes and their sources now, with some help from a blog called Impertinent Remarks.
I guess I'm kind of surprised that wasn't all just Gene Wilder, just riffing.
And I feel that way too. I associate these quotes so much with Gene because he did speak like that in life. And if you read his own quotes, a lot of the things that he's quoted as saying, and you read his memoir and things like that, he speaks like this. He speaks in such little bite-sized pieces of wisdom.
Right.
Everything's wrapped in on a neat bow.
He seems like that kind of guy.
I think it really fit. I think this was a genius move by Seltzer. And I think Gene recognized the beauty in it, the potential in it, and ran with it.
I'm really glad because, it seems like if you make a movie with Gene Wilder, really what ends up being the movie is sort of his decision.
It's him.
And for him to just latch onto what you wrote.
You're always going to get what you wrote. You don't know if it's going to be one extreme or another. So interesting. We'll talk about it. We have so much to say about Gene. First up is, so shines a good deed in a weary world. I always love the way that he says it. This is actually from The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare.
Nice.
Though the original line is actually, so shines a good deed in a naughty world.
Oh.
So Vicky Fred had something to do with that.
Yeah, definitely.
Of course, we are the music makers, and we are the dreamers of dreams. I quote it. I say it all the time. The way that he says it has this sparkle about it. It's a little bit sarcastic, but it's also just the most sincere thing he's ever said in his life. It's both.
He brings so much whimsy.
This is from Ode by Arthur O'Shaughnessy, published in 1873. It's a very old poem.
Wow.
All I ask is a tall ship and a star to steer her by. This is from Sea Fever, a poem by John Masefield, published in 1902.
Jesus. All these old quotes.
Old
not even
quotes.
they were well-known
new to
quotes.
me. They were new to me in the 90s when I watched this on repeat.
I don't just mean old, I mean obscure.
And obscure, that too.
This guy just pulled them out of a hat? Or what the hell?
This single-handedly pulled them out of obscurity. I love it. Candy is dandy, but liquor is quicker. This is from the 1931 poem Reflections on Icebreaking by Ogden Nash.
That's crazy.
a little nonsense now and then is relished by the wisest men. This is like a proverb that dates back to the 18th century. I couldn't find like a specific source, but
these are tales of a very well-read writer.
Ding, ding, ding. You nailed it. That's what I'm about to say in my next paragraph. I always liked the way he said this one as he's like chewing on gum or something. The suspense is terrible. I hope it'll last.
Yes. That's one
it's
of my
from
favorite.
Oscar Wilde's play, The Importance of Being Earnest.
Yes.
So that's one that you probably recognize and you don't remember where from.
Yeah.
For me, I always go back to Wonka, but I knew at least, if nothing else, that one wasn't Wonka because I feel like that one I had heard before.
I love Oscar Wilde.
Where is fancy bread? In the heart or in the head? That's from The Merchant of Venice by William Shakespeare, but the original line is,
Again.
Tell me where is fancy bread? Or in the heart or in the head.
Oh, okay.
Little different.
Shakespeare, you
Shook
devil.
up the cadence there.
Yeah, I got to.
Is it my soul that calls upon my name? I loved it so much. I have always loved it. Of course, that's from Romeo and Juliet.
So, yes.
Probably have heard that one before. But is it my soul that calls upon my name? Like, what a more, like, there's no more beautiful way to say, like, I know your soul knows my soul, like anything like that than
that.
In Romeo and Juliet. Oh, you should never, never doubt what nobody is sure about. This is from the poem The Microbe by Hilary Belloc. Didn't have a date on that one.
Huh.
Round the world and home again, that's the sailor's way. I love how Wonka talks like a sailor. Who knows if he's ever... He sails on the Chocolate River, but like beyond that, is that really considered sailing? It's not a sailboat. I don't know.
In the book, he calls it his private yacht.
There we go. More accurate, I think.
And it's completely made of candy.
That is from the poem Homeward Bound by William Allingham.
Okay, all right.
This one isn't quoted by Wonka in the film, but... Up the airy mountain, down the rushing glen, we dare not go a-hunting for fear of little men. These lines are from the poem The Fairies by William Allingham as well.
Oh, all right.
The lines to the song Sweet Lovers Love the Spring that he sings while he's pedaling the bike, that's from Shakespeare's As You Like It.
Okay, all right.
A Thing of Beauty is a Joy Forever is from John Keats' Endymion, a poetic romance.
Oh, I love Keats.
Me too. I have a lot of Keats in my collages in my room, on my wall. Swifter than eagles and stronger than lions is a passage from the Bible, specifically 2 Samuel 1:23.
Gotta quote the Bible.
And one of my most quoted for some reason. I don't say it the way that it's said in the film. I say it the way that it's said in the poem. But bubbles, bubbles everywhere, not a drop to drink yet. This is from The Rime of the Ancient Mariner by Samuel Taylor Coleridge.
Yes, I was
the original line is, of course, water, water everywhere, and all the boards did shrink, water, water everywhere, nor any drop to drink. But I say all the time, water, water everywhere, and not a drop to drink.
Yes.
Or if people say anything in that cadence at all, I finish it with, and not a drop to drink. I don't know, I've done it for too long to stop.
You did that to me one time, and I was like, what are you talking about?
You've not heard it?
No, well, The Rime of the Ancient Mariner is one of my favorite
there you go.
pieces of literature.
Then why'd you ask? You already
exist.
knew.
I mean, it's, been a long time since I've read it, but also it began my fascination with the albatross.
The albatross, yes.
I love an albatross.
I was going to reference the albatross and Taylor Swift and all that stuff too, but alas, we don't have enough time to get into all the poetic magic of all the things that we love. As I said, they aren't all his direct quotes, but I love the Wonka flavor that Seltzer gave many of them. They're all made his and managed to tell us so much about his character, the way he chooses to twist and tweak and adapt them, the knowing sincerity, and the fact that he remembers and recalls them in the first place.
Right.
And that says a lot about not only Wonka, but David Seltzer as well.
Absolutely.
Y'all already know, understanding the art and literature and media that folks love is one of my absolute favorite and most effective, in my opinion, ways to get to know a person. So thanks to Seltzer, it's part of how we get to know the fire and finesse of Wonka. And these quotes, of course, became so linked and so tied to Gene Wilder in my mind. Like we said, it's all the same to me.
It's such a brilliant way to take a children's book character that is just pure whimsy from start to finish and make him a living, breathing, heart beating, blood pulsing human being. To
be pulling things that are obscure, but still existing in our natural world,
right?
To pull them in and remind you that he kind of exists in your world too, even though you can look at him and very easily feel like he doesn't. It kind of grounds him again.
It grounds him
because you're like, that was vaguely familiar. Like that seemed like something I would know. Like he speaks your language without speaking your language at all.
But at the same time, it elevates him in a way because he can
both.
Almost perfectly quote all of these pieces of literature In the movie, he isn't just a genius of candy and chocolate.
Mm-mm.
He doesn't just create the impossible, but also he's a genius of like intellect.
Yes,
and
he is
thought
a
and history and
philosopher.
literature. And he has apparently a photographic memory. But they took the
Seems like
whimsy.
I wish that I could pull quotes like that out of thin
I've
air
never
when
been
I'm
good
in
at
conversation, and I really struggle. I wish that I could. I've always wanted to be able to do it. I think in part because I watched Wonka do it.
Yeah.
I have always wanted to be that, but typically it does not come to me in the moment. It comes to me later. That's why I feel like I'm better like writing or on text than I am speaking out loud half the time, because
Same.
it's in here. It's just, it doesn't immediately come to me.
It's
when
all inside the library of half knowledge.
Yep.
I know where to find the information.
The books are open. I just
They're all there for the taking.
have a hard time in the moment getting there.
That sets us apart from other types of people. Is we watch this movie and we aspire to be Wonka,
Yeah.
not Charlie.
I was more so on the train. I mean, I definitely had moments of like, I want a golden ticket. I want to believe. I want to
Well, sure. We all want our Hogwarts
want
letter.
that.
We all want the
Exactly.
golden ticket.
I had
but
that. But in general, I aspired toward Wonka way more.
one step further, be the person who invented the golden ticket.
Yeah. I wanted to have that concept.
That's who I want to be.
Yeah. And you maybe even more so than me. I like his philosophy and the way that he thinks about the world and the way that he relates.
Yeah.
And you're like, I want to have had the idea for the golden ticket that brought all the children to the factory.
I want to be the guy who wrote the freaking
You want to be the
book
guy that wrote
on
the
the
book.
whole thing.
Right.
I want to be Roald Dahl.
You want to take it
Let's be honest.
deeper again.
One more layer. Just one more step.
Speaking of Dahl, one of my favorite production stories also came from David Seltzer. He said once he had wrapped the film, he left exhausted, having not slept for weeks, and ended up at his cabin in Maine.
Huh.
He said it was like being shot out the other end of a tornado. You see, Dahl had written the ending of the screenplay, and upon receipt, Mel Stewart, the director, said, "We aren't going to end the picture with, 'Grandpa says yippee. Find me Seltzer.'"
He says yippee quite a bit in the book.
So, near his little cabin in Maine, the communal payphone rang, and Seltzer just so happened to pick it up. And Mel said, "I want the end line."
Oh.
And Seltzer said, "When do you want it?"
Like yesterday.
And Mel said, "I want it now, like in the song."
Nice.
So Seltzer, on his feet, panicking, he's thinking he's just left this all behind in Germany and arrived back to Maine, and he's going to put this whole ordeal behind him for better or worse. And he gets this phone call on the communal payphone. So he's totally caught off guard. He's flat-footed. So he says he pitched the only thing that he could think of in the moment, which was happily ever after.
Yeah.
In a low warning voice, don't forget what happened to the man who suddenly got everything he wanted. He lived happily ever after. He said there was dead silence on the other end of the line, and Seltzer thought that he was totally sunk.
Yeah.
But after a few seconds, Mel said, "Fantastic." He gave Gene the line, and they shot it in that same moment.
Wow. Holy shit. When do you need it? Literally, we are about to roll camera.
Rolling. Yeah, like now.
I need the line now.
Correct. That's what happened.
That's great.
It seems odd to me because there is a time difference from Maine to Munich, but I didn't question it. I said, okay, it's a great story. Maybe it wasn't exact, but hey, I do believe that Seltzer, pulled that out on the fly, and I think that that's awesome. And I think that's another testament to, again, the kind of person and the kind of writer that David Seltzer is, that he has all
totally.
of this stuff. That's the kind of person that I want to be. That's the core of it, really, is I want to be the kind of person that has all of this stuff stored in my mind. I want it to be always floating around. I want to always have my mind on things like this so that when the moment comes, I can deliver.
Yeah.
That's the kind of person that I want to be. I want to be thinking about
Me too.
higher things if we want to go biblical with it.
That kind of reminds me of when we covered The Goonies, and the director, Richard Donner, wrapped the film, went to Hawaii, and said basically, don't contact me forever. I'm done. I'm tired. I need to rest.
Yeah.
And they all showed up at his house in Hawaii to crash his little post wrap, rest period.
It was this not quite melding of the minds between Stewart and Dahl that has become an infamous element of the production. I feel like a lot of people have heard about how Roald Dahl wasn't super thrilled by it.
Yeah.
Several things were changed and shifted against his wishes, such as Wonka's character getting more emphasis over Charlie.
Mm-hmm.
Slugworth, who was originally a minor character, just an industry rival in the book, they reworked into a spy so that the film could have a villain for intrigue. The fizzy lifting drinks scene, which Dahl felt undermined the purity of Charlie's character.
Yes.
And the walnut shelling squirrels changing to golden egg laying geese, which...
Right.
Did you really want to work with squirrels on set?
Absolutely not.
I think the geese were the right move, personally. I think most of these things were the right move, especially when you're talking about a theatrical cinematic shift.
Yeah.
These creative differences, and I'm sure many more minute ones, led Dahl to eventually disown the film. I feel like even Roald Dahl should have been able to admit that the whole bad egg thing was clever. Though.
Roald Dahl really needed Henry Selick to come along 20 years earlier and make an, claymation animated Willy Wonka.
Maybe.
But, that's just me.
I'm just thinking about what the world would be like if we got that in addition to all of these. I feel like we have exactly what we need from the Wonka franchise. And I still haven't seen Timothée Chalamet, so...
I was going to say, we have one film too many.
Right. Roald Dahl also refused to engage in further adaptations of the book in his lifetime, which is why it took so long for any further adaptations to happen, including the sequel, Charlie and the Great Glass Elevator.
Sure.
After intense location scouting in Europe, including the Guinness Brewery in Ireland and a real-life chocolate factory in Spain, legendary art director and production designer Harper Goff decided to house the factory sets and the massive chocolate room at Bavaria Studios in Munich, Germany. It was also much more economical than filming in the United States, and the exterior shooting locations in Munich, Bavaria, and West Germany were conducive to the desired atmosphere for Wonka's factory. Stewart liked the ambiguity and unfamiliarity they provided.
Right, yeah.
Principal photography commenced on August 31st, 1970, and ended on November 19th, also 1970.
I do recall looking up the filming locations and was surprised to see that it was in, Germany. And not like a studio in California.
All in Germany.
Because that shot through the gates of the factory, it looks like a film studio.
It does.
It really does.
It does, but there is also that ambiguity to the whole thing. It looks vaguely European and also like vaguely East Coast. And also, they never reference, for example, they never really reference currency because they didn't want to pigeonhole it to being American or they didn't want you to really know where you were at all. They wanted to be distanced. It was very fantastical, and they wanted to emphasize that fantasy element, which is another reason why Germany was perfect, because there's this like storybook quality to it.
Fairy tales, Yeah,
they kind of went out of their way to keep it whimsical and missing any of those like touchstones of like, okay, we're in America because they talked about the dollar or, it was pretty distanced from anything like that.
Oh, I know. That's Pied Piper territory. So we know how.
We know a little bit about that.
Darkly nostalgic.
Very interesting how that's also
Germany
about a man who whistles and calls a bunch of children to his candy factory of doom.
I saw a lot of parallels. I noticed a lot of parallels.
Before we get too much deeper into the production, I do want to pause for a second to tell you about Mr. Harper Goff, who is the genius behind the effervescent and otherworldly chocolate room set that sparked multiple generations of pure imagination. Yes, I'm going to say pure imagination as many times as humanly possible.
At least
so buckle up.
baker's dozen more times.
Harper Goff studied art at Chouinard Art Institute in Los Angeles and then moved to New York City, where he worked as a magazine illustrator, producing artwork for Collier's, Esquire, and National Geographic.
Wow. But
during World War II, by his own account, Goff was approached for advice about camouflage paint by the U.S. Army because he'd been making paint and working on a do-it-yourself painter's kit. He was assigned to a camouflage research facility, and he developed a set of paint colors, which he compared to like a paint-by-number kit, that were used as standard issue hues for camouflage, as well as a camouflage pigment that was chemically impermanent, enabling its removal when it was no longer needed.
What in the world?
Later in the war, he transferred to the U.S. Navy, where, in his words, he was working on confusing the silhouettes of ships.
Oh, right.
He's an artist hired by the military.
I find more interesting.
No, the camouflage to me it was the standard for camouflage. Like he picked what colors would be camouflage.
That is interesting. If I didn't find camouflage so uninteresting, it would be interesting.
Are you telling me that my fun facts aren't interesting?
No, your historical research is really fascinating. I'm glad you did it.
Sure,
and
whatever.
Brought it to the table.
Whatever.
I'm proud to be an American, and I'm so glad.
God. Hey. I didn't say any of that. All I said was that he chose the hues for camouflage, which I find it very interesting that somebody with his skill sets, that he was so clearly artistically inclined. There were all these applications that you never would have thought of.
He didn't know it was just going to be worn in public by Proud Boys and Good Old Boys.
Yeah, there's that.
Everyone who thinks that the South will rise again. He didn't know that it was going to be misused in that way.
No, he didn't. He was just trying to be helpful.
As an artistic choice that says, don't tread on me.
No, it says tread on me. You don't know I'm here.
Literally walk all over me. Someone should tell these mofos that.
That camouflage is meant to camouflage you.
Yeah.
And not make you stand out.
Right, exactly.
Harper then returned to the U.S. and he worked as a set designer for Warner Brothers, unsurprisingly, because clearly he was very talented when it came to these sorts of things.
Yeah.
He was also a lifelong model train enthusiast, which is only relevant to our story today, because in 1951, while in a London model-making shop, he met Walt Disney because they both wanted to buy the same model train.
That's where Walt Disney
Having met Disney, he joined
up.
the Los Angeles artistic team of the Walt Disney Studios, which was a relationship that continued off and on until his death in 1993. He's specifically credited with many of the inventive effects in Disney's groundbreaking live-action film, 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea, which he art-directed.
Oh, wow. That's pretty cool.
And for my fellow Disney aficionados, Goff also contributed heavily to the early renderings and concept art for Disneyland and several areas of Disney World.
Dang.
When Tom Sawyer Island opened in 1973 at Magic Kingdom, they named Harper's Mill after him. You've seen that on Tom Sawyer Island. That's Harper Goff.
Yeah.
And just above the Adventureland Bazaar shop in Disneyland, there's a window dedicated to Goff for his time in Walt Disney Imagineering.
That's really cool.
So next time you pass by, say a little hello to Mr. Harper Goff, because he's the man behind the Chocolate Room.
Wow.
I dare say one of the most famous film sets in all of film history.
Definitely the most recognizable. And little known fact, there's so much to the Chocolate Room that you never actually see, that no one's ever seen before, because it is coated in camouflage.
Yeah, who knows what's actually hiding in there?
It was a mistake on the part.
Oh, Jesus.
It was the main flaw of the film production, is that they put so many things in camouflage.
We're sorry, Harper.
Oompa Loompas were everywhere.
Mm.
You couldn't see them. There's just so much about that set you couldn't see. It was a tragic mistake.
It was amazing what you could see, but you just don't even know what you couldn't see. We never do. We never know what we can't see.
It's a double-edged sword, camouflage. A blessing and a curse.
In keeping with the German theme, Wonka does the short German monologue prior to entering the inventing room. And I've always wondered what he was saying, because it's pretty much perfect German that he's speaking. He says, "Ladies and gentlemen, please give me your attention. You now come into the most interesting room of my factory, the most secret room at the same time. Ladies and gentlemen, the inventing room." Wikipedia says, the construction of the original inventing room was meant to be an industrial room with steel tubes. But Mel Stewart envisioned it differently as a wacky inventor's laboratory with Rube Goldberg-type mechanisms and unusual contraptions, and wanted it redesigned to be like Wonka's personality. So Harper Goff sent his construction crew into Munich searching junkyards, bakeries, and car dealers for discarded machinery, tin funnels, and any other raw materials. This included building Wonka's 3-course gum machine, which was originally a solid-state device. But Mel Stewart requested an appliance whose operations had a visual experience for the audience. And I think he was right about that, because it was admittedly one of the most memorable things in the room, or really in the movie, that like kind of stamp machine that makes the gum, you know?
Yeah.
For whatever reason, that always stuck with me too. And it was very important to Mel that it look like Wonka's personality. It's not just a tube that you reference, you know?
That's interesting. Yeah, in the book, it's described almost as like an apothecary shop. Like he says there's a bunch of bubbling cauldrons and such that would be like witches would have these cauldrons. Like it's very old world in a way.
I could see that too.
It's like old world meets, modern technology.
Yeah.
Modern for the 60s.
Yeah, there's definitely like an air of both to it. One of my other favorite Mel Stewart and Harper Goff collaborations involved Wonka's office, because Stewart instructed Goff to have all the props, furniture, and fittings, excluding the light bulbs, that was very important, be cut in half to reflect the character's eccentricity.
Okay, yeah.
Mel Stewart said, "I couldn't face the thought of ending the journey through this fabulous factory in an ordinary-looking office. I always remember as a kid seeing that office with everything cut in half, and I remember thinking, of course Wonka wouldn't have a regular office.
Yeah, it just made sense.
He's a regular man that needs an office to work at this factory. Like he has you know what I mean? Like he exists within some of our structures. He has this office. He has this need to be a businessman, but he can't even do that normally.
It has to be eccentric.
It has to be different.
Yeah.
And it was such a simple way to do it too. Just cut everything in half.
It would have felt weird if everything had just been normal.
Exactly.
It would have felt odd.
It would have felt out of place. Or then again, it could have been used as like a psychological tool to say, now the charade is over. The curtain is up and here's what it's really like. But I like that he didn't do it that way. even when the curtain's up, Wonka's still Wonka.
Pay no attention to the Wonka behind the curtain.
I'm glad it didn't turn out that way. Moving toward the chocolate room. The musical code for entering the chocolate room that's played by Willy Wonka, like the little overture, is The Marriage of Figaro by Wolfgang Amadeus Mozart.
Oh, yes.
But Miss TV incorrectly states the composer as Sergei Rachmaninoff.
How'd that happen?
I think
She was just wrong?
she's just wrong.
Like, is that the end of it, or does he ever correct her?
He
I
doesn't
don't
correct
remember.
her. I think it's just meant to be like she kind of thinks she knows and she doesn't.
Oh, interesting. I guess I was wondering because there's a lot of moments in the book where people are like asking, honestly, pretty good questions about what's happening, and he just totally dismisses them every single time. That's where he says things like, "You're mumbling. I need you to speak up if you're going to ask what you know."
Yeah, and he does that in the film
Or,
too.
"You ask too many questions," or like things like that.
Right. He doesn't want to answer any questions. He doesn't want to be pigeonholed into any
He doesn't want to be
answer.
held accountable.
Right.
So,
It's all like,
you know.
you would think that this character would bother me as much as I hate, number one, feeling unheard, and number two, feeling dismissed.
Yeah.
If I were a child or even a parent having a conversation with Willy Wonka, I would probably find him insufferable
Yeah, no, absolutely.
because he's never talking to you. He's always talking around you.
But he's like the patron saint of just letting magic live.
Right. That's what
Like,
it is.
don't
That's why it's
question it.
okay. That's why it's
Stop
okay.
asking questions. Just exist in
Just
the moment. Just
Be
here.
here. Experience this.
Enjoy this.
And yeah,
I think that's really more of it.
you're right.
And he's frustrated that these people
Can't just
can't
do
seem
that.
to just enjoy this for what
Yeah,
it is.
That's probably why I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
Because it isn't dismissive in a mean way as much as the condescending Wonka meme is condescending.
Yeah.
It isn't always dismissive in a mean way. I think you're right. I think he's more like, get out of your own way, would ya? Like that's more his frustration.
He's a little bit insulting in the book. I think he is insulting in the both movies too.
He can be.
I just feel like you see the frustration of the author come through a little bit.
hmm
And I get it.
After working at Walt Disney World and dealing with the general public,
Yeah.
I understand as well. Like,
Making little quips.
I can't say that I wouldn't be a little bit like that in certain circumstances. Specifically of the Chocolate Room set, the actress who played Violet, Denise Nickerson, said it was twice as good in person as it was on camera. The sentiment was echoed by nearly all of the actors that I saw discussing the film. I think it really just was that impressive. And an example of Stewart's method preferences, the children hadn't seen the set when those doors first opened. So that's their genuine reaction.
Oh, wow.
Except for Julie Dawn Cole, who Peter Ostrom likes to pick on in different interviews, because apparently Harper Goff had seen her passing by one day and asked her if she wanted to see the chocolate room and showed it to her, kind of
Oh, yeah.
just, in passing, check it out, look what we're working on kind of thing. And apparently Julie Dawn Cole, who played Veruca, never told Mel Stewart, the director, that she had already seen it because she heard him talking to somebody pretty angrily about, don't let the kids see this, blah, blah, blah.
Oh,
So she
keep
never
your
said
mouth shut.
that she had seen it.
If he knows I've seen it, he might recast me.
Right, exactly.
Somebody else might take my part.
So for all of them except for Veruca, it's their genuine reaction to seeing it for the first time.
It also kind of works for her character. She's not very
kinda does.
easily impressed anyway.
She would need to be a little less impressed.
hmm
In one of the anniversary interviews, Gene said that kids were asking him throughout those decades, all the time, if the candy room was real. And he always said about a third of it actually was.
As in edible? Eatable?
hmm For instance, the big suckers were edible.
Huh.
The cup that he takes a bite of at the end was wax. So he had to bite it and then spit it out after every take.
It wasn't edible.
It wasn't candy, but it was enough to chew it.
I thought it would be like that fake sugar glass material
hmm
that they use a lot.
Yeah.
I figured that would actually be
You
because
probably could do that today, and you could have done it then, but I think it would have been a lot of trouble
Yeah.
to have it manufactured in such like a precise way. Instead, it was just wax in a mold, which we have candy
Yeah.
wax all the time, like the little soda pop candy.
Yeah.
That's what I pictured it like, and that's exactly what it was like. Like you bite it and it's
Okay.
waxy.
I see.
The giant
I
gummy
see.
bears were mostly plastic, but the ears were edible. Veruca had a chocolate watermelon. Like it wasn't edible on the outside. The outside was something else,
Mhm.
but the inside had chocolate in it. So she actually had to like drop it on the rock and break it open,
yeah.
which you can see happen in the film. And also, you can also see that there's blood on her stockings, her tights, because she came down on the actual rock one time
Oh no.
when she was supposed to be breaking open the chocolate. So
Oh.
she says she still has a scar from that, which what better way to get a scar?
Gladly take a Willy Wonka scar.
It's like a tattoo to commemorate the day.
Yeah.
Mike did get actual gumballs from the tree. Violet's 3-course gum, though it doesn't happen in the chocolate room, that was actually a toffee-based candy,
Okay.
so it wasn't even gum.
Still chewy.
They said marzipan was freely available on set for whatever reason.
Is this Germany?
It's very popular in Germany, I will say. Having been to Germany several times, marzipan is on every candy counter.
Hey.
And the giant mushrooms were filled with whipped cream.
Yeah.
And a lot of the trees had edible leaves.
Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That's crazy.
Yeah.
God, I love that. I wanted to eat
my whole
every
entire
single
life,
thing.
Since I can remember being conscious, I've wanted to walk around in that chocolate room.
I wanted to eat everything. I still do.
Obviously, that was the goal, right? Like they wanted to build something so fantastical, so beautiful, and also that looked so good to eat that you would want to leave your couch, leave your home, and get in there somehow.
Go to it.
To go to it. I have always wanted to walk through that chocolate room.
I can understand the hazards of why it wouldn't exist, but also why does this not exist?
It just can't, because it could never live up to what's in our pure imagination.
They could never,
From that room.
Yeah.
Not too long ago, there was something like called the Willy Wonka experience. You remember that? It was like a social media catastrophe. It was horrible.
Oh my God, I
Nothing
forgot
worked.
about that
Nothing
thing.
was right. I don't know that it was meant to be the chocolate room. I never looked deep into it, and I still haven't. So
The thing was, all the promotional materials for that were created by AI. So it looked like a really, really incredible, fantastic Willy Wonka experience. And you got there, and it was
like a cocktail party.
Not even that.
Like a bare minimum. Yeah.
Oh, it was like an empty warehouse with like sheets up and like booths and people kind of dressed like Oompa Loompas.
Okay, yeah.
With like pieces of candy and like handouts and weird stuff. It was a total gimmick.
I feel like that's kind of everything now, though.
It was a total gimmick.
It is all a total gimmick. Nothing has the money to look like that in
It
terms
was
of
like
an event, like a local event.
You know the big walkthrough of the fair before you can get to the fair?
The vendors.
That's what the Wonka experience was.
A trunk or treat Willy Wonka edition.
It was basically that, yes. With no decorations.
To answer all your burning questions about where this stuff was filmed, the things you can actually see, external shots of the factory were filmed at the gasworks of Stadwerk Munchen, with the imposing industrial-looking building serving as a perfect stand-in for the mysterious factory.
Yeah.
The entrance and the side buildings apparently still exist. The exterior of Charlie Bucket's house, a set constructed solely for the film, was filmed at Kellenstrasse in Munich. And I only know how to say Strasse, street, in German because I went there. Otherwise, I wouldn't have a clue because it's the German alphabet.
Do you know if that house is still there?
No, I don't think so because it was made just for the movie.
So not like the town of Spectre that Tim Burton built.
No, they didn't just leave it behind. No.
You can just go visit that now.
I know, right?
It's a little island full of goats.
Yep.
There are goats everywhere.
Bill's Candy Shop, which I've also always wanted to go to for my whole life, was filmed at Lilienstrasse in Munich.
The Candyman can.
And the closing sequence in which the Wonkavator is flying above the factory is footage of Nordlingen, Bavaria.
Okay.
Which, interesting fact about that town, supposedly, they say that the town itself is located inside a 15.5-mile wide crater from an asteroid impact over 14 million years ago. You can see the ridges of the crater's edge at the top of the screen when the Wonkavator is passing over.
No way.
Yeah.
Wow. Go back and look at that.
They say that some of the stone structures in this town and the surrounding areas are actually speckled with little tiny diamonds.
Oh.
From the impact of the asteroid.
So are we going to go there and harvest all these diamonds? Is that what's happening?
I'm sure if you could, someone already would have. The exact street addresses are actually available for a lot of these places, if you do ever find yourself in Munich, Germany.
I hope I do one day.
Unfortunately, I never went to Munich. I went to Hamburg. Although the film only took 5 or so months to shoot, it was kind of a well-known joke that director Bob Fosse was said to have come in every afternoon like clockwork around 5 p.m., toward the end of the production to complain that they were preventing him from shooting Cabaret on the same stage. He was like, how long is it going to take you to make this damn movie? And they're like, as long as it takes, Bob. And he's like, ha! And it was just a recurring thing every day.
That's not a long time for a movie in
It's
those
really
days,
not.
though.
That's why I was like, give them time, Bob. Let them cook. They got stuff to do.
That seems like a normal amount of time.
That's what I thought. In one last little production fun fact, the scene where the technician is trying to have the giant computer calculate the locations of the last remaining golden tickets was actually the last scene that they filmed for the movie. And it was filmed at such last minute that there was like luggage and things scattered around the set while they were already in the process of packing up to wrap the film.
Oh, that's fun. In the book, that's a gold seeking machine. So it doesn't predict where it's going to be. it can just sense if there's gold inside of a candy wrapper. And what ends up happening is it ends up reaching inside the mouth of a woman nearby.
Gold tooth.
And then there was like mayhem.
Yikes.
And all the locals beat the machine, like had to like destroy the machine because
so that it didn't come after their mouth.
It was about to
go on a gold seeking rampage.
Yeah, rip something out of her mouth. Yeah.
That's wild. Well, it wouldn't be a pretty dark movie night if we didn't discuss the music.
Why did they make it a musical?
Good question. It's said that Mel Stewart himself wasn't big on incorporating music at first, but he agreed that it would help to enhance the fantasy element. And I think he was right, although it's very likely that Christian will disagree with me.
You always think it's right to
I
add
do.
musical
I think
numbers.
music, you can't go wrong. Music makes everything better.
I love the music in this movie.
Wow, okay.
I mostly Gene Wilder.
Sure.
And I like the Oompa Loompas, but I don't agree with opening this movie with the Candyman
Who
song.
can take the sunrise?
I think it's slow, it's sleepy.
I like it.
I know
I'm always
you
gonna
love
like
it. I know you love it. but Just get past that and I'm good. I love everything else.
We'll learn a lot about all of these songs, especially the two that were standouts from the soundtrack.
Yeah.
The musical numbers were written by the songwriting powerhouse duo of Leslie Bricusse, who did lyrics, and Anthony Newley, who did the music.
Another duo.
Together, they had written the musical Stop the World, I Want to Get Off in 1961, which was the basis of a 1966 film version that featured the Grammy-winning Song of the Year, What Kind of Fool Am I? Was Sammy Davis Jr.
Okay.
And another musical from which came the hit song Feeling Good that you and I would more readily attribute to Nina Simone or Muse or perhaps even Nicole Bublé.
Yeah.
They also wrote for the 1976 live-action Peter Pan, Babes in Toyland, Hook, and Home Alone with John Williams,
Okay.
Jekyll and Hyde, and stage musicals of Sherlock Holmes, Scrooge, and Dr. Dolittle.
So many of our favorites.
Individually, Anthony Newley had his own success as both an actor and a burgeoning pop star. In an interview with the New York Post, Bricusse discussed the success of the Candyman track, which Newley had told him was written very quickly in a friend's bathroom.
No cocaine involved, I'm sure.
I'm sure. Bricusse said, in the film, the song was diabolically performed by an actor who couldn't sing, which is kind of harsh in my opinion.
Yowza.
But fortunately for Bricusse, who apparently thought that this was just an injustice, Sammy Davis Jr.'s manager was looking for a song that he could sing for children, the kind of success that Frank Sinatra had had with High Hopes. He picked the Candyman, and Davis tossed off a recording and did it very unhappily because he thought the song was cloying and would, quoting, take his career down the toilet.
Okay.
Said it was going to send his career down the toilet bowl. It was going to circle the toilet bowl. Like he said something very, very much like he did not want to do this.
Wow. It's a very popular song.
It became
very well known.
Sammy Davis Jr.'s only #1 hit.
Yeah, wow. That's insane.
The only one.
That's nuts.
Bricusse continued talking about the soundtrack, saying, we wanted to write 10 songs, but the budget only allowed for 6, so to me it doesn't really feel like a musical.
Mhm.
He said all the kids should have a song, but they don't. And even Charlie doesn't have a song. He said, I wrote a very nice song called Think Positive for Charlie, but it wasn't used. I wish I could hear it.
Yeah. Did they ever record it?
I don't think so.
Well, someone should just find that song and perform it.
Yeah, that would be cool. Bricusse has stated that Pure Imagination was written over the phone in a day with Anthony Newley, claiming that they were song-a-day people, which that's a thing in songwriting. Like, some people just crank them out, and some people just take weeks upon weeks.
Sure,
And I think it's just on a song-by-song basis sometimes. Sometimes they just happen.
Sometimes the song writes itself. Other times you have to force it into existence, just manhandle it into creation.
It's true of pretty much everything written.
God, I love that song.
It's a great song. Gene Wilder said that Anthony Newley came by the studio on the night that he recorded the song and gave Gene a hug and said all the best, like basically wished him luck. But he left because he didn't want to make Gene nervous, which apparently Gene rather appreciated.
Sure, of course.
Since the release of Pure Imagination, it's been covered and remixed hundreds of times by a wide variety of artists. And while the original song never charted like the Candyman did, several of the covers have done so.
There was that one during COVID in all the commercials.
Yeah.
It was good. I
I'm
don't
trying
know.
to think of who it was, but I can't remember.
I never looked it up.
I've blocked it out, probably.
Tough times, tough times.
I put some of the lyrics in here because they really do not only take me back to my childhood, but they take me back to believing that anything's possible the way that a lot of Disney music does as well.
It's a great song.
There is no life I know to compare with Pure Imagination. Living there, you'll be free if you truly wish to be. And this one I really like. And I sing to myself all the time. If you want to view paradise, simply look around and view it. Anything you want to do it. Want to change the world? There's nothing to it. It really makes you believe that anything's possible.
It does.
And I don't think that we would believe in any of the things that we see in this movie at all in the same way without the music.
I think that's true.
It takes it to another place.
It conveys almost like his true self because he is so sarcastic.
The way that music does for all of us. We talk about it all the time. Music cuts through and it finds something else.
It's him at his most sincere, I think, because it shows that he's a believer. He's a believer.
We're the dreamers.
In the thing, right.
Of dreams.
Because you almost get the feeling just from his performance and his approach to everything that he's tired, which he is. That's the whole point of Willy Wonka is he's tired.
That's what I was about to say. He's tired and he's looking for his successor.
Exactly. That's the entire premise of this whole story. So you get that and you almost get the sense that the magic is gone. But when he sings the song, it cuts through
any type of jaded...
the exhaustion.
Yeah.
It shows that this is the magic he's held on to all this time. And this is why we even have the story, because he still believes in the magic.
And we all need that, don't we? I feel like this happens over and over on That's Pretty
Every
Dark.
2 weeks, man.
I think every 2 weeks we say something akin to the magic's still there if you believe in it.
Yeah.
And it is a theme in my life for sure.
It's there if you want it to be.
We can't mention the pure imagination part without also quickly acknowledging the terrifying tunnel scene, whose lyrics we will explore much, much further in part 2. But those lyrics, unlike the rest of the lyrical twists and turns, belonged entirely to Roald Dahl himself.
Yeah.
This was a poem of his design.
There are a number of long-winded poems in the book. They're songs from the Oompa Loompas mostly, and I can't wait to read those. But on the riverboat,
the Grizzly Reaper mowing
is almost, if not word for word. And they all freak out like they do in the movie.
As they should.
Yeah. They're like, this
It's
guy's
a lot.
lost his mind.
And that was another example of the method way of Mel Stewart, the method, if you will, because
method.
He really didn't warn the kids what was going to happen. None of them knew that it was going to get to that level of that frenzied place.
Yeah.
They didn't know it was going there. So they were looking at Gene have you lost your marbles? Because it feels a little bit like he does. But again, part two. Tease. I know, guys. I know.
Oh, man.
Dear Darklings, I know you hate it. I'm sorry.
Oh, this would be a 4.5, 5 hour long episode if we didn't cut it in half.
Yeah, it would.
If not longer.
We'll get there.
Depending.
One last note about the music is that Walter Scharf, a 10-time Oscar nominee, arranged and conducted the orchestral score.
Huh, yeah.
Scharf worked on more than 100 films, receiving nominations for his musical direction on such pictures as Danny Kaye's Hans Christian Andersen in 1952, Barbra Streisand's Funny Girl in 1968, and, of course, Willy Wonka and the Chocolate Factory.
How about that?
Thank you, Walter.
Thanks, Scharf.
We have now arrived at the casting segment.
So many cast members.
There are so many cast members, but my favorite and your favorite, I think, is Mr. Gene Wilder.
Ooh.
He's larger than life to me, being one of my dad's favorite actors, and I know I'm not the only one who feels that way.
Genius.
I've mentioned it before on the show, but the Remembering Gene Wilder documentary from last year is a great watch, and I'm only going to be able to hit the very, very, highlights of his life.
Yeah, the highest notes.
So I would encourage you to watch that documentary if you have any interest in his life or career, because I personally loved it, thought it was great.
I will. I want to.
Gene was born Jerome Silberman on June 11th, 1933.
Jerome.
Jerome.
Has not fit him at all.
It doesn't. His father was a Jewish Russian immigrant, as were his maternal grandparents. He first became interested in acting at age 8 when his mother was diagnosed with a heart condition, and the doctor told him that he mustn't argue with her because he could kill her.
Okay.
And he should instead try to make her laugh.
I see.
That is a pretty dark burden for an 8-year-old child.
That is a very difficult time, yes.
He was literally told, basically, don't upset your mom or you could be her undoing. So he took it very literally.
Yeah, it'll be your fault that she dies, yeah.
And as one of the, I think it was a New York Post article said, for years, Wilder labored under the impression that a few sharp words could mortally wound his mom, and that some well-timed jokes might actually extend her life.
I cannot imagine going through life like that.
I kind of can. Not to that extent, but I definitely believed that I had an impact like that. I felt like it would be my fault one way or the other, always. I always felt like I had some type of control, which is a form of OCD. to feel like you can control or prevent something, which is kind of what Gene describes that he developed basically through a lot of his teenage life. Whenever he felt happy, he found himself needing to compulsively pray for forgiveness.
Mhm.
He kind of called it like neuroses or just a compulsion, but it sounds a lot to me like religious OCD
Yeah,
because I had it myself.
me too.
Forgiveness for what, though? He didn't really know. But he said, my mother was suffering every day of her life, and what right did I have to be happy if she was suffering?
Right.
So he really internalized like his mom's struggles, and it was what made him want to make people laugh, but it came from such a dark place, ironically.
That's true of many, many comedians, but that's a very like specific.
Very, very
reason.
literal way
Yeah,
to find that joy.
that's wild.
He was also very inspired by his sister. He was watching her acting when he was younger, and he wanted to join her acting class.
Yeah.
I think he was like 11, and he called her acting teacher, and he said, if you're still interested in it when you're 13, I'll take you in. And so he called the day after his 13th birthday, which is just, it's such
That's
a childlike
great.
thing, and I think it's so funny and so perfect.
Wow. So his start was when he was 13, and Dahl at age 13
Mhm.
went to the boarding school where he had the chocolate.
Yep.
13, guys.
13 years
Not
old.
such an unlucky number after all.
Hey. And it also just goes to show that those coming of age formative things really do kind of shape you.
Of course, yeah.
To be 8 years old and to take on that burden, and then to find the passion for it still through all of that, and to make it something that you
Yeah.
truly are passionate about and you live your
To
life
not
for,
hate
rather
it.
than to not hate
not resent
this
it.
or resent it at all.
That's a lot.
Um,
That's wild.
It's sad and it's difficult, but it's also like kind of beautiful.
It is. So much humor comes from
From pain.
depression.
We know
like
it.
Dark places and pain. So most of mine comes from, I used to think that I didn't make jokes to laugh through the pain, but you pointed out that I do. And now I've been like mortally aware of it ever since.
I pointed that out.
Early in the podcast, I was like,
Whoops.
I don't do this. That's not something I do. And you were like, you kind of
kinda
do.
do. I
was
kind of
like,
do it too.
Oh, I
I
guess
feel like I'm
do.
never funnier than when I am like describing a terrible, tragedy that I've gone through.
Yeah, when I'm really trying to like laugh through a bad day, that's when I have like the best time,
Yeah.
which is odd.
As he continued to study acting and was accepted into the Actors Studio in New York, he felt that Jerry Silverman in Macbeth didn't quite have the right ring to it. So he adopted a stage name. He chose Wilder because it reminded him of Our Town author Thornton Wilder.
Okay, all right.
Which also made me feel really connected to Gene Wilder, because I've also, for some strange reason, always felt really connected to the play Our Town since I read it in middle school or high school.
How about that?
It was referenced in The Wonder Years also in like a pivotal scene.
I don't think I've ever read it or seen it.
And I had a character reference it in a project that you worked on.
The project that should not be named,
Yeah.
lest people go find it on YouTube.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It has always felt very close to my heart, and I loved hearing that that was how Gene chose his stage name also. He chose Gene from the character Eugene Gant in Thomas Wolfe's first novel, Look Homeward, Angel. But he later said that he couldn't see Gene Wilder playing Macbeth either.
Yeah, well,
We can now, but even still at the
Of course.
time, it was hard for him to get enough distance to
I understand.
see that as a real possibility.
I understand.
In 1963, Wilder was cast in a leading role in Mother Courage and Her Children, a production starring Anne Bancroft, who introduced Jean to her boyfriend and later husband, Mel Brooks, which eventually led to his most celebrated professional partnership in such comedy
Yeah.
classics as The Producers, Blazing Saddles, and Young Frankenstein.
Frankenstein.
Those are really the trifecta of Gene Wilder movies, but I would also
Yeah.
say you gotta include Willy Wonka when you talk about Gene.
You have to.
You have to.
Quadfecta.
But obviously, he is renowned for his performances in those and other films like Silver Streak, Stir Crazy, See No Evil, Hear No Evil,
Mm-hmm.
and even Another You, all the way into the 90s. Gene was not only one of the best actors of the century, but was also a talented writer, director, and producer in his own right. Before he was officially cast as Willy Wonka, producers considered many actors such as Peter Sellers, Joel Grey, and Spike Milligan, who was Roald Dahl's original choice. It's a British comedian. Wikipedia said that actors were auditioned for the role of Willy Wonka in a suite at the Plaza Hotel in New York, and by the end of the week, Wilder had walked in. And it was then that Stewart and Wolper realized that they could stop looking. Wolper remarked, "The role fit him tighter than one of Jacques Cousteau's wetsuits." Stuart was captivated by the humor in Jean's eyes and said his inflection was perfect. He had the sardonic, demonic edge that we were looking for. Wilbur tried to suppress Mel Stewart's eagerness for the actor because he wanted to like negotiate a salary. You know, you can't just be like, just like when you go to like an open house or something, you can't be like, yeah, I want it. I definitely want it. I love it. I need it.
Yeah.
You can't act like that. You got to like hedge your bets and like give a poker face a little bit. But
right, of course.
Mel Stewart was incapable of that and instead ran out into the hall as Gene Wilder was leaving and offered him the part because he felt like he was Wonka. And I think awesome. Mel Stewart, that was probably the best decision Mel Stewart ever made in his whole career.
I'm really just glad that their first choice wasn't like Jimmy Savile. That would have been a nightmare.
It could have been, as we often say, it could have been such a different movie.
It could have been
if it had been anybody but Gene.
Can you imagine?
Famously, so you may already know this, Darklings, but Gene accepted the role on one condition. And that condition was, when I make my first entrance, I'd like to come out the door carrying a cane and then walk toward the crowd with a limp. After the crowd sees Willy Wonka as a cripple, they'll all whisper to themselves and then become deathly quiet. And as I walk toward them, my cane sinks into one of the cobblestones and stands straight up by itself, but I keep on walking until I realize that I no longer have my cane. And I start to fall forward, but just before I hit the ground, I do a beautiful forward somersault and bounce back up to great applause. Mel Stewart said, "What do you want to do that for?" And Gene Wilder answered, "From that time on, no one will know if I'm lying or telling the truth."
Hey, he's got a point.
Just as brilliant as David Seltzer. I don't think it could have been written better. I think it had to come from the actor who was trying to play and embody the character. An idea like that.
That's brilliant. And that's why I kind of like assumed so many of the little asides that he had for himself were just Gene Wilder being crazy.
Right.
Or brilliant, or what's the difference?
Which is why I kind of agreed with you and said some of them are. Like,
I love that this was his whole invention.
It was his conception. Like, he wanted that moment and it happens exactly like he described it.
That always threw me too.
Me too. I mean, it's one of the most iconic moments from the whole movie. And he sells it. You know, he believes it. I think I read it. It took like 2 weeks and a couple stunt guys that like worked with him on his somersault so that he could do it that effortlessly.
I always wondered if that wasn't like a stunt guy, and I've watched it before and been like, that's him.
It's Gene. Yeah.
There's no cut. There's nothing there. Like,
he did it.
He's wearing a top hat too, isn't he?
He's wearing a top hat.
That's so hard to do.
It comes off and he kind of catches it.
Yeah. I think it has to. There's no way you can do it. I've watched
this. I really couldn't tell you how many dozens of times I've watched this movie in my life, but it's a lot. In this role, Gene's comic talent and natural charisma brought tenderness and livability to a monstrous boogeyman, and also an uncertain edge to an impossibly fantastical, wise, fatherly figure. The magic of most of Gene's performances, and really his own life, was rooted in this balance and duality. We kind of said it earlier, but I wrote it here in my notes. You knew exactly what you were going to get, and at the same time, you never quite knew.
You never knew what to expect, yeah.
He was an artist in every sense of the word. He was always 2 steps ahead, and I really love that about him. Just who he was as a person. He was truly kind, and I think he was truly, you know, he talked about it a lot. Like, he kind of had the inner demons, but he's like, everybody has demons. Like, you have to kind of know their names. And like, he was just very real. He was very respectful of the human experience. He was ahead of a lot of things that a lot more people should have been ahead of his time, you know, in some ways, politically, socially.
Sure. Yeah.
Really big fan of Gene Wilder.
It's rare to find a star of that level with that immense amount of talent that could still be kind.
Yeah,
to
exactly.
Just the average person.
He never lost the humanity.
Right.
That was what was so fascinating, is like he used the humanity. He utilized it so deeply in his acting work.
Yeah.
But he still managed to like hang on to it for himself, which is hard to do.
Very.
Gene passed away from complications with Alzheimer's on August 29th, 2016, and I still remember vividly finding out about that, because that one, it really rocked me when he passed away. He was so like tied to my childhood. In a statement by his nephew upon his death, they explained his wishes to keep his condition quiet until his passing. It said the decision to wait until this time to disclose his condition wasn't vanity, but more so that the countless young children that would smile or call out to him and say, "There's Willy Wonka," would not have to then be exposed to an adult referencing illness or trouble, causing delight to travel to worry, disappointment, or confusion. He simply couldn't bear the idea of one less smile in the world.
So he is the patron saint of just letting magic live.
He is.
He really, truly is.
Down to his last wish, essentially.
That is remarkable.
Beautiful man. Beautiful legacy. Love Gene Wilder. I feel like he was always thinking like that. It's another example of him just being 2 steps ahead of everything.
Right, yeah.
And the fact that he not even being able to like have people pay tribute to him and say, oh, you have this condition. Like, we want to make sure to give you your flowers while you're still alive, as they say now. Like,
yeah, he just denied that.
He kind of like forewent all of that, any that he could have had, knowing that his condition was deteriorating, just to avoid that shadow being cast on his legacy at the time.
That's really something special. That's so rare. That's just such a rare gift.
I agree.
To everyone.
Another of Gene's quotes that was spread around after his passing about his desire to act really stuck with me, and I thought it was a really great place to kind of leave our conversation about Gene. He said, "The big catalyst was seeing my sister when I was 11 doing a dramatic recital. When I saw her on the stage and everyone listening to her so patiently and quietly, that's all I wanted. For someone to look at me and listen to me, but in some beautiful and artistic way."
Oh, wow.
And I'm not an actor, but I've always wanted the same thing for as long as I can remember. And I only hope to be able to access that feeling or that respect in some semblance of the same humble and very lovely way that Gene Wilder did.
Yeah, that's something we talked about a lot when we first started the podcast. We were like, we thought it would be a very cathartic thing for both of us. Because I've always been talked over and not listened to in my life as well.
Yeah, you and I both have a lot of...
My mom thinks that's why I had a stutter as a kid. I think there were other reasons in addition to that. But I can understand that fully. You're the person with the written lines of dialogue. You have to say them. You have to for this to work.
Right.
And people have to listen to you say them.
Right. This whole construct is about this exchange of information.
Yeah, that's the whole point.
And you want to say these things. Not only do you want to, but you need to. And they want to listen to you.
Yeah, because you embody them, you make them part of yourself, and you find something in them to relate to and make your own.
Which is why I love film and TV and all of it.
It's wonderful.
Because in the words of one of our favorite bands, the Devil Music Company, why do they call it fiction when fiction contains more of the truth than anything that was ever true?
What is it? Fiction is the lies we tell to tell the truth.
Yeah, exactly. And you know, that's been my like life story practically. So
same.
Thanks y'all for letting us indulge that on this here podcast.
Thanks y'all.
We're big fans.
So who's next? Who we got next?
Next up is Peter Ostrom, who played the role of Charlie Bucket.
All right.
He remembers reading from the book to audition when he was in the 6th grade. And you could tell that they were really going for the genuine, like just naive young boy in his casting.
Yeah.
And even Peter said that he didn't feel like he was acting, but instead playing himself.
Okay.
He really stayed true to himself and stayed genuine, and he did not continue in Hollywood. This was his only role.
I've noticed that he didn't really have a career.
He's now a veterinarian in upstate New York, has been for a long time. He bought a horse, actually, with some of his money from playing this role.
That's awesome.
He bought a horse and decided that was a better direction for his life.
That's cool.
He continues to make appearances at public schools when he's asked to, though, talking about like, you know, your life can go any number of ways and they're all okay and they're all good. And, you know, he brings the book to schools and stuff. So it's
talk to the TikTok crowd and say, you don't have to be famous to have a fulfilled life.
Right. That's his whole message, and it's pretty cool.
So says I, trying to pursue a career in the arts and writing,
podcasting and writing.
And all this kind of stuff. I'm a VP of a private corporation. Thank you very much.
We've always said we didn't want to do this to be famous. And quite frankly, anytime our views start to creep up on social media, I'm like, I don't actually want this. Oh no, abort. Like I get real freaked out.
We're doing a pretty good job of laying low, sneaking along beneath the threshold of success.
There's a fine line that I am very comfortable walking. Peter discussed in one of his featurette interviews how you hope as a parent that kids will make the correct decision even when they're out on their own. And Charlie was really representative of that. Like, you've been raised in a certain way. You've been raised in this household that teaches you to be kind and honest and gives you all these qualities or hopes that you'll have them. And then he's sent kind of out into the world the first time and proves himself.
Yeah.
He also said that toward the end of the shoot, when he was the only kid left, he and Gene Wilder often ate lunch together, and they finished those lunches by sharing a chocolate bar for dessert as they walked back to set.
What a memory to have.
Jack Albertson played Grandpa Joe. Some would call him the true villain of the picture, letting his daughter work herself to the bone, caring for him as an invalid for 2 decades, only to hop up unscathed one day when it was time to take her place accompanying Charlie on a grand adventure.
This couldn't just go get a job to help take care of the family?
Nope. He was going to wait until an opportunity to go to a chocolate factory arose, and then he was going to arise with it.
Yeah, in the book, Mrs. Bucket doesn't work. She stays home and cares for them. So
right.
It's even more tragic, really, because, like, you know, Mr. Bucket's out there making pennies, and she's home taking care of the family, and like Grandpa Joe could just be out getting a fucking job. But to be fair, in the book, he's 96 and a half.
Yes. And Jack Albertson was, I think, in his 60s when he played 90-something.
Younger than my father. So
it's pretty funny.
Who still gets up and works himself to the bone every day of his life.
I don't mean to actually be critical of him. Apparently, Jack Albertson was a lovely person. Peter Ostrom said that he became like a mentor to him, and he was
I'm
great.
sure the actor was great.
But it definitely is a conversation around the internet how it wasn't really fair that he got to jump up and go with Charlie when Charlie's mom had been singing "Cheer Up, Charlie" and just literally working her fingers to the bone, you know, trying to provide for him, and then for not just Charlie, but for her parents and her in-laws as well.
That's not the only thing that's really unfair and tragic about them, but that's a part 2 conversation.
Yes, I agree. We'll put a pin in that for part 2 because there is so much to be said. Jack Albertson is also known for roles like Amos Slade in The Fox and the Hound.
Oh, wow.
John Cleary in The Subject Was Roses, which was a 1969 Oscar winner.
All right.
The Man in Chico and the Man, which is a 1976 Emmy winner. And a metric ton of TV appearances throughout the 50s, 60s, and 70s. He passed away in 1981. Please rest in peace, Jack. We know you weren't really the villain. And while we are talking about the grandparents, I don't have them all broken down, but Ernst Ziegler, who played Grandpa George, was nearly blind from poison gas in World War I.
Holy shit.
So he was instructed to look for a red light to guide him when his character was meant to be looking in a specific direction.
Wild.
World War I.
That's insane.
Moving right along, we have Julie Dawn Cole. Talked about her a little bit earlier. She played Veruca Salt, and this was her debut role as well.
Right, yeah.
Her interviews about the film were really fun to watch. She said that they kept wanting her to be like nastier and meaner. They kept like goading her to like take it further and be like more nasty. And I think that she really maxed it out. She said that she based the character on girls at her private school that she couldn't stand. It's funny. Yes. Something that she likes to share is that they actually shot the I Want It Now song on her 13th birthday.
13s everywhere. 13.
Can you imagine doing that on your 13th birthday?
Age 13.
It was quite a lot of takes, too. I don't remember the number, but it was an astronomical amount of takes that they did through that song.
Wow.
And for this occasion, Gene Wilder actually arranged a photographer to take a set of like color stills, which was still really unusual at the time, to get like color photos done to commemorate her birthday.
That's so cool. Wow.
It's really fun.
What a guy.
Even after injuring her knee in the chocolate room, she seemed to have truly loved working on the film, and she speaks of her time very fondly. She said it really was like a children's version of winning the lottery, like being in this movie.
Oh, I can imagine. I mean, getting cast in this film would be like getting the golden ticket.
It would be really similar.
Like a real life version
very close
of
to
that.
the same thing. And they're filming in Germany, so it's all kind of a summer camp kind of experience where it's contained and a trip that you'll never forget.
Kind of like getting cast in Harry Potter would have been like getting your Hogwarts letter.
Right.
You got to go to Hogwarts.
Yeah, it's the closest you can get in life.
Yeah.
And speaking of, she apparently kept her everlasting gobstopper and golden ticket from the movie, even though she was told to return them.
Oh, I would keep it too. Absolutely.
I would want to.
Yeah.
I don't know if I'd be brave enough.
I probably wouldn't have been brave enough. I would now. Not at 13.
Julie did some other TV series and soap opera work as a teen, and she's actually still in voiceover work to a degree. And she's also now a fitness instructor.
Okay. Wow.
Roy Kinnear played Mr. Salt, Veruca's father. And his other roles include Pipkin in Watership Down and Moriarty's assistant in The Adventures of Sherlock Holmes' Smarter Brother with Gene Wilder.
Wow.
And he passed away in 1988.
That's wild.
Denise Nickerson played Violet Beauregard. She remembered being cast in New York, like at a casting call, and she remembered being really excited to work with other kids because she'd mostly done soap operas and she hadn't really worked with a lot of other kids up to that point.
Yeah. She
and Julie did become close during their 5 months in Munich, dancing to Carpenter's records in their hotel room together, and they referred to each other as sister, which is really sweet.
Aw, that's sweet.
The way that she spoke and the way that she was kind of just as snotty as Veruca, but in a different way, in a more subtle way that would have been kind of difficult, I think, to get a child actor to get on board for. Because there is that like weird sarcastic undertone. She had that I talk back, but she wasn't demanding like Veruca. It was a different like flavor of like misbehavior.
To put it a certain way.
I don't know. I was impressed by her watching it back. I'm like, they just don't make child actors like these anymore.
Who really get it to that extent.
Yeah. And it seems like they did.
That method approach.
Denise was kind of funny too. In one of her interviews, she talked about how the Oompa Loompas didn't have their blueberry driver's licenses. So she would kind of, they were really short. You know, they're shorter than she is wide.
Yeah.
And they wouldn't quite be able to control her rolling around in the blueberry. So she would bang her head into the door frame or into the wall.
Oh, no.
She said that she would get away from him, and she'll never forget the experience of like, I can't control my limbs. Like I'm at your mercy, guys.
I never thought about that. That's
funny.
Really funny.
She also did some soap opera work. She did a couple films, and she even appeared on The Brady Bunch, season 5, episode 18 as Pamela, if you're curious, like me, because I love The Brady Bunch.
You probably remember her.
I do. Because I watched so much Brady Bunch. I just can't explain to you.
I just did not like the Brady Bunch.
She says she did all of this before getting a, quoting, real job in the medical field. And she went on to become an accountant later and was also a mother. She was the first of the children to pass away, and she passed away in 2019.
Oh, wow.
So rest in peace, Denise. Violet's father, Mr. Beauregard, was played by Leonard Stone. He played Doc Jocelyn on Camp Run-Amok and Charles in Soylent Green, and had a few other credits. His final role before his 2011 passing was as the Canyon Guide in Avatar: The Last Airbender.
No way. That's nuts. Man, Soylent Green, though.
Yeah.
That's a trip. If you guys haven't seen that, do it.
Next up, we've got Paris Themin, who played Mike TV.
Paris?
Yes, his name is Paris.
Wow.
This character always depressed the f- out of me. Like, more than anyone else watching it. So much so that I would sometimes skip his shrinking scene when I watched it, just because for some reason when we got down to the last two, I don't know what it was. I don't know if it was the, like, progression, the rolling wheel of time, and I'm, like, we're descending into a place where all these kids get disposed of in one way or another.
It's just like too much to take at that point, too much to handle.
I really don't know. Like he irritated me as a character more than the others did.
He's annoying as hell.
Well, it's another case of maybe he wasn't acting so much. He irritated me, but those scenes, like the scene where Mike TV shrinks, just depressed me. I don't know if it was the frequency of the music. I don't know what it was, but it made me feel the same way that something like a Once Upon a Forest makes me feel, where it kind of turns my stomach and makes me want to turn the TV off.
Yeah, the TV.
The TV. I don't know what it was, but that's how I feel about it. I'm sure we will do our own shrinking to figure it out in part 2.
I hope so. Mike TV. It took me reading the book to realize his last name wasn't just like a joke. Mike TV. Like TV. It's spelled out. Yeah. Teavee.
It is a joke. It's just.
Yeah, but I thought he was like a nickname. Hey, that's old Mike TV. Like he's a gangster.
Well,
that's old TV Mike.
And in the book, doesn't he prefer gangster movies?
Yeah. It's not cowboys, it's gangsters. And he carries around like 30 guns on his person.
Oh.
Toy guns. They're toys.
Well, he has a toy revolver, I think, in the movie, too.
In the book, he's, every drawing of him, he's just covered in guns. So, he's obsessed.
Paris had been acting for 5 years at the time of filming, and though he didn't do too much in the way of acting afterward, as Gene said in an interview, he knew how to be an obnoxious kid better than anybody that Gene had ever seen.
Oh, wow. It's like the nicest way to put
and
that.
I don't want to be rude about it, but even watching the interviews of him as grown up, I kind of got the vibe. Like, I get it. Like, I understand what they mean.
So he was perfectly cast, is what you mean.
He has the actually, like...
Get this kid out of here.
But Gene went on to say in that same interview that he loved him now, but that he was a troublemaker on set. And this troublemaker reputation was echoed by Mel Stewart, who said that one of Paris's attempts to create trouble on set was to release the honeybees from the gum making machine. They were actually wasps, apparently, that they had in... I don't know if maybe because bees are protected and they couldn't use them in filming. I don't know, but I think I read that they were actually wasps. But he tried to release them, and he was successful, but he got stung on the face.
Good for him.
Yeah. It was kind of an art imitating reality moment when he was met with the consequences of his actions, like right there.
Kids are dumb.
They can be. Paris went to NYU for theater and worked as a PA and a second AD, and he got a job as a business manager in Disney Imagineering somehow. Not sure how that happened. And then he said he started a rollerblade business, and then he ran camera at casting sessions, And lastly, he accepted a position as a financial consultant.
What a weird ride
Right?
he had.
You had no idea where I was going.
No.
And I really didn't either. So, interesting character.
Very interesting.
Mr. Paris.
Person.
Nora Denny portrayed Miss TV. She appeared in titles like Bewitched, Get Smart, and Splash.
Nice.
So she kind of did the run of that era as well.
Yeah.
And she left us in 2005. But her voice, more than any of the other parents, sticks in my noggin.
It's very
Rachmaninoff.
particular.
A German boy, Michael Bollner, who could speak very little English, was cast in the role of Augustus Gloop. And it was also his only acting role.
Wow.
He's said to have had no dressing room because he lived so close by to set and he could get changed and prepare at home and then walk to set.
Oh, wow. All right.
Unlike the other interview scenes when the kids are finding their golden tickets, Augustus's interview was filmed at an authentic restaurant in Munich where most of the cast members went for lunch while the movie was being filmed.
That's fun.
It looks German. You know what I mean?
Yeah, of course. Yeah.
It has that vibe. He's interviewed often about the Chocolate River scene. And he says that while most of the river was rather shallow, there was a hole that was about 3 meters across. And he had to basically dive into the hole every time. Like, because they didn't have the whole thing wasn't that deep. It was just this one spot that he could dive into.
Yeah.
And he said it really wasn't easy to do that because the water was so dark and murky. And he was afraid that he would hit his head on the bottom every time. He kind of had to fall naturally in, but he fell in naturally like 40 some odd times, you know.
Can you imagine like the wardrobe change?
Really tough to do. So, and he has no acting experience. And I personally, after being subjected to that scene, I can understand why he didn't continue acting.
No, absolutely.
He's like, well, had that experience.
No, it's terrible.
Don't need to do that
the
again.
The wardrobe change alone, how did they get him new clothes? They have 40 pairs of clothes?
I don't know. He was wet for a lot of the day, they said.
God.
That's a tough day for a kid in any circumstance, but
I feel like I would regret it. I feel like I would be like,
I know. I'd be like, why did I do this? I would definitely reach a point
what happened
where I'd be like,
today?
Is this worth it?
Why did I do that?
Yeah.
To myself over and over voluntarily?
I forget exactly what they said. I didn't write it down about the tube that he goes up, but the actual, like, they filmed him from a certain angle where you could see as though his head was in the tube, the whole thing. But it was actually a puppet that was wearing the clothes that got sucked up the tube.
Oh, right. When it was sucked up. Sure.
Wasn't actually him, if you didn't know. I feel like it's fairly obvious, but no Michael Bollners were harmed in the making of
I was assuming you would tell us how it was filmed, but I mean, that's wild.
Yeah, but Michael Bollner went to school for accounting as well, and he's now a tax and public accountant. And I think it's kind of wild because 3 of the 5 kids ended up being in accounting.
Hey,
weird.
Gotta manage money. People need help.
There you go. German actress Ursula Wright played Miss Gloop, and funny enough, her other projects both before and after Willy Wonka were almost exclusively German movies with risque titles and covers.
Oh, yeah?
Get it, Ursula. She did her thing.
I should look them up, huh?
They were intense, some of them. Like, there was some nudity.
Oh.
Not necessarily by her on the cover, but I haven't seen the films to know.
Huh.
But, I mean, yeah, I hope she got it while she could. Good on her.
Well, you're welcome, Darklings.
She had fun. She actually passed away in the late 90s, so rest in peace, Ursula. Thanks for having fun.
Did she just straight up do porn?
I couldn't tell. I couldn't tell if it was just, like, soft or if it was straight up. But, I mean, it was on IMDb, so does IMDb have porn? I've never
I'm sure.
looked.
I've never looked either.
I've never looked to see if they
imagine.
credit
they
actual
have porn,
pornos, but...
film awards. So,
yeah.
I mean, why wouldn't it be recognized on IMDb?
I guess that's a fair point. I don't know.
Why wouldn't it be?
Diana Soul played Miss Bucket, one of the most gloomy, overworked, and least appreciated mother characters in all of fiction, in my opinion.
It's true.
This was her debut role, but as is apparent to me, she was very active in theater. I think she had a very theatrical, like, performance, which I didn't mind. I mean,
sure.
She had a song and everything, so... She did have a couple of other small film roles, but she passed away in 2018, so pretty recently. In apparently a somewhat controversial acting choice, if you ask Leslie Bricusse, actor Aubrey Woods played the role of Bill the Candyman. Both Sammy Davis Jr. and Anthony Newley himself wanted to play this role and do this musical number, but Mel Stewart didn't want that because he felt the presence of a star in the scene would break the reality. And I tend to agree with him.
I agree, yeah.
Aubrey never bothered me. He was whimsical and nice, and despite hitting a girl in the chin with the counter in one of the scenes, they actually left the take in.
I have seen that, yeah.
Yeah, despite that, I think he did a great job, and it wouldn't be the same without him, in my opinion. I want to go to Bill's, and I want Aubrey to be behind the counter. Damn it.
Yeah.
Aubrey also had roles in The Life and Adventures of Nicholas Nickleby, Wuthering Heights, and Doctor Who, and he left us in 2013.
All these people dying.
I know. I'm
What's
really
up with
sorry to be
that?
the bearer of all these death notices. I actually say that in my notes in the next character because
Oh,
Mr.
no.
Slugworth was played by Gunter Meisner. His performance is kind of burned into my mind too, with that hypercritical, suspicious stare. Like he took the role of spy and elevated it, and then as we know, he was acting that he was acting. So I think,
Right.
and it was for children. So I think
It
that
was
it
a
was
performance
overdone.
within a performance.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And it was overdone for a reason, and I think it worked really well. He appeared in mostly German movies up to that point, and he also passed away in the 90s.
I have some questions about Mr. Slugworth and how he.
So do I.
I don't want to get too far ahead, but how did he know where to be at the right time?
I actually know the answer to that.
Yeah.
The reason that he knows where to be, and it's kind of a lingering plot point that doesn't ever get explained.
GPS tracking.
Originally, Wonka had planted it for these specific kids. I think that was the thought, is that he had chosen already. He'd pre-selected. And that kind of lingers because of Slugworth's presence. Otherwise, how did he know?
Deeper question. How did Wonka know these kids existed?
That I never
How
saw.
does he know?
How was he spying on the kids to choose? Don't know.
How did he select?
Don't know what his criteria were, nor how he got his intel. Maybe he had Slugworth taking notes on a bunch of kids.
That's creepy as hell.
Narrowed it down.
That's
I don't know.
creepy. I don't like that at all.
I don't think that's what happened. I think that it was by chance in the canon. That's what I choose to believe. And Slugworth is just, there's a little bit of magic to it. That was kind of how I always explained it to myself in my mind, was that it was magic. You also have to think that most of the time when Slugworth shows up, it's during the television interview. It's when it's being publicized. So perhaps there was enough time in between for him to somehow find out.
That's true. He does. You're right. Maybe my whole point is just sort of null.
It's a good thought. We need to be, this is how we're thinking. We're going to keep thinking
it's
like
a
that.
moo point.
Moo, like the cow's opinion.
Moo.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I guess that was kind of a dumb question now I think about it.
Not necessarily.
If the press is there, Slugworth can be there.
He does have to go a lot of places really
That's going to be local press, right?
That's what I'm saying.
But he knows to be there.
It could tip him off, but yeah.
Because in my mind, that was when the world found out who had the golden ticket.
Yeah,
because local
and I think
press
you're meant
was
to think of it
there.
that way. Like it is a
But
lingering.
Slugworth-
It is a lingering device from a plot point that didn't come to fruition. So
Yeah.
it actually doesn't make sense.
Yeah.
But it was magic. My last cast member to talk about today is Rusty Goff, who portrayed the main Oompa Loompa.
All right. Yeah.
His credits include some characters in Star Wars Episode 4, A New Hope, a dwarf in Willow, a Gringotts goblin in Harry Potter and the Sorcerer's Stone,
Nice.
and several others. But as we'll learn in a moment, he was not the only Oompa Loompa.
No, there were a bunch.
And for all of Rusty's talent, there's still much to be said about the depiction of Oompa Loompas in the books, especially, and the attention that garnered from the NAACP, but we will also discuss that in part 2. But to wrap it up on a fun Oompa Loompa note, though, in the 50th anniversary interview with The Hollywood Reporter, they asked if any of the then child actors had any Oompa Loompa stories, and Julie Dawn Cole had one. She explained, well, the Oompa Loompas, there were 10 of them, 9 guys and 1 woman, from all nationalities around the globe, quite a few Brits, but German, Turkish, Persian, French, and they were characters in every sense of the word, and they liked to party.
Yes.
They also liked to have a few drinks after work. On one occasion, they were all staying at the same hotel, and it was this corporate business hotel, Julie said. And back in the day, it was a thing that you did if you were a businessman where you'd put your shoes outside your room and the fairies of the night would clean your shoes. I'm thinking of The Office too, and Kevin. That was what immediately popped in my mind.
We threw your shoes away.
We've had your shoes disposed of, whatever he says.
Yeah.
But as the Oompa Loompas got back into their hotel a little bit late, a little bit merry, they got all the shoes from the entire hotel and tied all the shoelaces together and put them in the lift and sent them down to the lobby.
That's awesome.
Julie was like, you can only imagine these businessmen coming out, going to their high-powered meetings with no shoes.
Yeah, that's great. Oh my God.
So that's fun.
That's so fun because that's exactly how they're described in the book, is that they love a good time. They love to party.
They were just in character.
They were
just method acting. That's all.
But there's a section where he comes to a butterscotch room or something. He's talking about butterscotch.
Mm-hmm.
And he makes the joke that the Oompa Loompas love to hang out in the butterscotch room. There's also butter gin.
There you go, yeah.
And that the butterscotch goes great with soda and the butter gin goes great with tonic.
Mm-hmm.
And he says that That's where the Oompa Loompas like to go hang out after a long day.
Life imitates art.
And that's so great. The real life Oompa Loompas did the same thing. That's so fun to me. I want to hang out with the Oompa Loompas.
That would be fun.
So bad.
Apparently it was pretty challenging because not all of them spoke English, which was tough during production. But
I can imagine.
That did not stop them from all being fast friends, apparently, and making the most of their time in Munich.
Oh my God, what a good time that would be to go hang out with those guys.
Mel Stewart said at one point that this film was truly made by a bunch of amateurs flying by the seat of their pants.
What's that like?
It was the function of Scotch tape, cardboard, let's put on a show ingenuity. And as incredible as so many aspects of the production were visually and emotionally, you can sort of feel this shoestring mentality in the structure of the film. Sometimes it's even criticized for its structure.
Yeah.
But I think on the whole, it's rather charming and it's very accessible, the way that it ended up coming together.
Yeah, I would say so.
Mel Stewart also believed that the film found longevity in people's minds because it was made for adults. He said, I wasn't making a children's Disney picture.
Mm-hmm.
Mel had strong feelings that children are very bright and smart and hip, and they would get all of the references in the picture. And I think they did. Right, Darklings? It's the same philosophy that's behind nearly everything that's pretty dark. It's the thing that we keep coming back to and hitting on because it's the underlying principle or philosophy that drives so much of the entertainment that we grew up on, which is kids can handle it. Kids can handle more than you think. All you have to do is give them the opportunity and they'll rise to it.
Yep.
So I think this is a great example of that.
I'll say.
And I mean, a lot of the references and jokes I grew up with me. You know, the sarcasm and the satire in the interview scenes and going to the, you know, people seeking out the golden tickets, all those little like Monty Python sort of like inserts.
So much tongue-in-cheek humor.
Exactly. There's even more of that I want to talk about in part 2, so make sure you remind me. But there were a couple scenes that Mel Stewart really liked that had to get cut but he took the time where Deacon David Seltzer had written them out. But yeah, there's just so much to it. There are so many layers, and when you watch it back again and again, you find new things because there is so much going on. Especially in those early scenes. Like, I feel like they don't get enough credit because everybody's like, okay, let's get to the factory. But I really like the lead up as well.
Yeah, there's a lot of subtlety there, building that world out to make the factory that much more magical.
Right.
You know, that much more fantastic.
Right, because you had to kind of place it in the real world.
It has
but
to
they were
exist
so careful about
the
where
world.
in the real world they were. And they kind of only kept the very like glaring parts of reality. You know, it was still this heightened storybook kind of reality.
It's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
I can tell you that.
But yeah, this is the philosophy that's behind everything, and it's the philosophy that will carry us into the darkness of the film's plot, plus more behind-the-scenes shenanigans in part 2.
Damn. And the book. I cannot wait.
More of the book.
So hang out, watch the movie. It's spooky season. It is almost October. This is the time to be alive.
I've got ghosties in my tree outside, so it's officially time. If you want even more of us than is currently in your ears, you can find us on Patreon at patreon.com/tpdpodcast.
That's right.
We appreciate all of you that give us your hard-earned dollars to keep the flashlights on, and we're so grateful for you. You can also find us on social media at That's Pretty Dark Podcast on Instagram, at That's Pretty Dark on TikTok.
Write to us, That's Pretty Dark Podcast @gmail.com.
We'd love to hear how your spooky season is starting off.
Stock up on your Halloween candy. There's so much good stuff out there right now.
Torturous. I can't eat any of it. I can't
eat it because Kaylin
can't eat any of the candy in the movie, so eat it for me, Darklings. Next time you bite into one of those Reese's pumpkins, say, this is for Kaylin. And I know I'll hear it somewhere. In the ether, I'll know.
You'll feel it. Wow. Can't wait for part 2. Very, very, very excited.
Me neither. Just need to get those notes done. So now I'm going to go freak out about that some.
That sounds great.
Yay.
I'm going to go eat dinner.
Perfect.
This was fun. Thanks for doing the research. It was a lot of stuff.
So much. It feels like so much. I feel like I have read every article. I feel like I have wrung out every last piece of trivia from IMDb. I hope that I brought some new stuff to your ears. And even if not, maybe I just reinforced some stuff that you already knew and forgot about.
It's nice to be told that the thing you knew about is something that's real.
Validating.
True. Yeah, that's another word for it. Validating.
We are here for you, dear Darklings. You are never really alone in your pretty dark memories.
Yeah. Thanks for listening, guys. We'll catch you next time.
For our podcast anniversary.
Oh my God. 3 freaking years.
3 years. We'll see you then.
Bye now.
Thanks for listening to That's Pretty Dark, written and produced by Christian Baxter Mott and Kaylin Andrews.
Our music is composed by Jonathan Simmons, and our art is provided by Paige Garland at Power Girl Illustration.
Join the collective nostalgia and follow us on Facebook and Instagram at That's Pretty Dark Podcast.
Share your experiences and let us know what shows, films, or villains still haunt you from childhood at that'sprettydarkpodcast@gmail.com. Remember, you're never really alone.
So, until next time, sweet dreams, everyone.